Consider the autumn leaf. Bathed in the soft light of a late afternoon sun, it has held on through the spring's vigorous growth and the summer's relentless heat. Now, its work is done. It does not struggle. It does not mourn the loss of its green vitality. Instead, it offers a final, breathtaking display of gold and crimson and orange. And then, when the moment is right, it lets go. It releases its grip on the branch, not with a sense of failure, but with a quiet acceptance, surrendering to the wind to be carried in a final, graceful dance back to the earth that sustained it. It is not an end, but a return. This is the rhythm of nature, a cycle of arising and passing away, and within it, there is no fear. Yet, when we look in the mirror and see the first silver threads in our hair, or feel a new ache in our bones, we do not often see the beauty of this natural unfolding. Our culture has taught us to see a battle against time, a fight against decline, a desperate struggle to hold on to a version of ourselves that is, by its very nature, impermanent. This fear of aging becomes a constant, low hum beneath the surface of our lives, an undercurrent of anxiety that whispers of loss, of irrelevance, of dependency, and of being left behind. We invest so much energy in resisting this inevitable tide, and in doing so, we create a deep and exhausting conflict within ourselves, a noise so persistent that we forget what true rest feels like. But there is another way to perceive this journey, an ancient path of wisdom that invites us not to fight the river, but to learn to navigate its currents with grace. This path, illuminated by the teachings of the Buddha, does not see aging as a curse to be vanquished, but as a profound and sacred truth of existence, an unparalleled opportunity for our hearts and minds to ripen, to soften, to let go of the trivial and finally touch what is most essential. It is a path that teaches us to stop fighting the process and instead to find an unshakable peace right in the middle of it. This is the journey we will embark upon together, a journey not to some distant, future salvation, but inward, to discover a silence that is not an absence of sound, but a presence of profound stillness, a stillness so deep it can hold all the changes, all the uncertainties, and all the fears. We will learn to rest in this quietude, to sleep, as it were, in the very sound of silence. To begin our journey into the heart of peace, we must first dare to look at the nature of reality itself, without the filters of our hopes and fears. When we feel the ache of aging, whether it is in the mirror's reflection or a newfound limitation in our body, the first reaction is often deeply personal. It feels like a failure, a betrayal. A story begins to form in the mind, a story of my youth fading, my strength declining. We experience it as a solitary loss, an isolating verdict on our individual life. But the first truth that the path of awakening offers us is a radical reframing of this entire experience. It invites us to lift our gaze from our own personal story and see the vast, impersonal, and universal law that governs all of existence. In the ancient language of the Buddha, this law is called anicca, or impermanence. And it is not a flaw in the system, it is the system itself. It is the signature of life, written on every atom of the cosmos. The teaching on impermanence is not a depressing doctrine about how everything falls apart. It is a liberating truth that frees us from the impossible burden of trying to hold things together forever. Look to the world around you. The majestic mountains that seem so solid and eternal are, in the vast expanse of geological time, slowly but surely being worn down by wind and rain, their dust carried away to the sea. The stars that glitter in the night sky are not fixed points of light. They are colossal furnaces burning through their fuel, destined to one day collapse and fade. Every empire that was ever built, every institution that seemed invincible, has changed, crumbled, or transformed into something else entirely. This dance of arising and passing away is happening at every conceivable scale. It is happening in the life of a forest, where old trees fall to make way for new saplings to reach the light. It is happening in the cycle of the seasons, each one yielding to the next in a rhythm that is both predictable and ever new. And it is happening within your own body, right now, in this very moment. With every breath you take, billions of old cells are dying, and billions of new cells are being born. The person you are, physically, is not the same person you were 7 years ago. The body is not a static object. It is a flowing river of processes, a continuous exchange with the world around it. When we understand this, truly and deeply, the process of aging is no longer a personal affront. It is simply the universe being itself through us. Our graying hair, our wrinkling skin, these are not signs of failure. They are marks of participation. They are evidence that we are a part of this grand, magnificent, and ever-changing cosmic flow. We are not separate from nature's law. We are a perfect expression of it. The great misunderstanding, the source of so much of our inner turmoil, lies here. The suffering, the anxiety, the fear does not arise from the fact of change itself. It arises from our resistance to this fact. It comes from our clinging. Imagine standing by a beautiful, flowing river. The water is cool and clear, and its movement is constant. Now imagine trying to stop that river. You build a dam of expectations. You try to cup the water in your hands, desperate to hold on to a single, perfect moment of it. But the river simply flows on. The water slips through your fingers, your dam begins to leak, and you are left feeling frustrated, exhausted, and defeated. The river was never the problem. The problem was the attempt to make it something it is not: static, permanent, and possessible. This is precisely what we do with our lives. We try to grasp and hold on to youth, health, relationships, and identities as if they were solid objects. We build a fortress of attachment around a particular version of ourselves, the me who is young, strong, and in control. When the river of time inevitably continues to flow, eroding the walls of this fortress, we feel attacked. We experience pain. The Buddhist teaching is simple and direct. Let go of the fist, open your hand. Stop fighting the river and learn to flow with it. The fear of aging is the friction created between our desire for permanence and the reality of impermanence. When we reduce that friction by softening our grip, the fear begins to lose its power. We are no longer at war with the fundamental nature of life. So how do we practice this? How do we move from understanding impermanence as an idea to living it as a felt reality? The path begins not with a grand philosophical debate, but with something intimate, humble, and always available to you: your own breath. Your breath is the most immediate and faithful teacher of anicca. Take a moment, right now. Simply notice the sensation of the air entering your nostrils. Feel the slight coolness. Notice the expansion of your chest and abdomen. That is the in-breath. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then, without any effort from you, it turns into the out-breath, a gentle release, a letting go. That too has a beginning, a middle, and an end. You cannot hold on to the in-breath forever. You cannot stop the out-breath from coming. It is a perfect, miniature cycle of arising and passing away, and it happens around 20,000 times a day. By simply resting your attention on this cycle, you are training your mind to become comfortable with the rhythm of change. You are not trying to control the breath, only to observe it with a gentle, non-judgmental awareness. From the breath, we can extend this practice to the flow of our thoughts and feelings. Sit quietly for a few minutes, and you will notice that the mind is like a sky. Thoughts, like clouds, drift into view. A memory from the past, a plan for the future, a momentary judgment, a flicker of worry. Like the breath, each thought arises, stays for a moment, and, If you do not grasp onto it, it will eventually pass away. We are not asked to stop the thoughts, only to notice that they are not solid, permanent entities. They are transient events in consciousness. The same is true for our physical sensations. An itch appears on your arm. You can watch it arise, feel its intensity, and notice its eventual fading. An ache in your knee may be more persistent, but even it changes in intensity and character from moment to moment. By observing life in this way, through the microscope of our own attention, we begin to see impermanence everywhere. It ceases to be an abstract philosophy and becomes our most intimate experience. We are familiarizing ourselves with the very texture of reality. There is a story of an old Zen master who would teach his students by drawing a large, beautiful circle in the sand with his staff. One day, a visitor, an admirer of perfect forms, praised the circle for its flawless shape. The master smiled gently, and as a gust of wind began to stir the sand, blurring one edge of the circle, he said, "You see, its perfection was only truly revealed in its willingness to be imperfect, in its readiness to be erased." To cling to the idea of the one, perfect circle is to be in a constant state of anxiety, to understand that the beauty lies in the whole process, the drawing, the brief existence, and the disappearing that is freedom. Our lives, our bodies, our identities are like that circle in the sand. We spend so much energy trying to maintain a perfect, unchanging image, polishing it, defending it, and fearing any gust of wind that might alter it. But freedom, and the peace that comes with it, is found in understanding that we are not the static circle. We are the entire process. We are the drawing, the momentary form, and the graceful dissolving back into the sand. This realization does not make life meaningless. It makes every moment precious, because we know it will not come again in the same way. When you begin to truly absorb this truth, not just with your intellect, but with your whole being, a profound shift occurs, a softening. The rigid posture of resistance begins to relax. You can look at a new wrinkle not as an enemy, but with a kind of gentle curiosity, as a new line on the map of a life fully lived. You can feel a new physical limitation not as a final judgment, but as an invitation to find new ways of moving, new ways of being. You are not surrendering in defeat, you are surrendering to wisdom. You are aligning yourself with the way things are, and in that alignment, there is an incredible sense of relief. The constant, exhausting work of holding back the tide can finally cease. You can let the boat of your life be carried by the current, trusting that the river knows its way to the ocean. The fear of aging, which is so often the fear of things falling apart, is replaced by a growing trust in the flow itself. And so, we have taken our first look at the truth of impermanence, Anika. We see that change is not a personal failing but a universal law. We see that our suffering comes not from change, but from our resistance to it. And we have discovered the simple, powerful practice of observing this truth in our own breath and body. But this understanding opens up another, equally important question. If everything is always changing, and this is the natural state of affairs, why then does it so often feel unsatisfactory? Why is there this persistent background hum of discontent, this feeling that something is not quite right, even in our best moments? To answer this, we must be willing to look even deeper at the second great truth of our existence, the truth of what is known as dukkha. As we stand in the light of impermanence, seeing the constant flow of arising and passing in all things, a sense of relief can begin to dawn. We may feel the great weight of resisting reality begin to lift from our shoulders, and yet this understanding alone may not be enough to quiet the deep unease we feel about aging. We see that everything changes, but we still feel a sting when that change appears as a new wrinkle, a fading memory, or a loss of physical prowess. There is a persistent friction, a subtle sense of dissatisfaction that seems to haunt our experience. This brings us to the second great truth offered on this path, a truth that looks directly at this very friction. It is the truth of what is called dukkha. This ancient Pali word is often translated simply as suffering, but that single word is too narrow, too heavy. It fails to capture the immense subtlety and scope of the diagnosis. Dukkha is not just the agony of a terrible tragedy or the pain of a severe illness. It is also the faint background hum of unsatisfactoriness that pervades even our pleasant moments. It is the feeling that something is just slightly off-kilter, the inherent instability of a life built on changing conditions. It is the stress of holding on and the pain of letting go. The fear of aging is one of the most profound and pervasive forms of dukkha in our modern world. It is a complex anxiety woven from many threads. It is the dread of future pain, the sorrow for a youth that is slipping away, and the deep existential worry about becoming irrelevant or a burden. This fear is not something that only appears when we are old. It lives in the young person who dreads their 30th birthday, in the middle-aged person who anxiously checks for new lines around their eyes, in the retiree who feels a pang of loss for the structure and identity of their career. This anxiety is a present moment experience, a form of dukkha that colors our perception of life right now, robbing the present of its potential for peace and joy. To understand how to work with this fear, we must first learn to dissect it, to see its different layers and textures as described in the teachings. Dukkha is said to appear in three distinct, though often overlapping, forms. The first is the most obvious and easily understood. It is called dukkha dukkha, which can be translated as the suffering of pain or the pain of painful experiences. This is the raw, undeniable hardship of life. When you stub your toe, that sharp, immediate sensation is dukkha dukkha. When you catch the flu, the fever, the aches, and the fatigue are dukkha dukkha. As we age, this form of dukkha can become more familiar. It is the chronic pain in a joint, the grief that arises with the loss of friends and loved ones, the frustration of not being able to do something you once did with ease, and the reality of sickness. The Buddhist path does not pretend this kind of pain doesn't exist. It is not a path of denial. It fully acknowledges these unavoidable pains as an intrinsic part of having a physical body in the world. The aim is not to create a life magically free from all pain, but to change our relationship to the pain that does arise, to learn how to hold it with wisdom and compassion, rather than with fear and resistance. This is the overt suffering that we all know and seek to avoid. The second form of dukkha is more subtle and in many ways more challenging to our modern sensibilities. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change, or the suffering inherent in pleasant experiences. This sounds like a contradiction. How can something pleasant be a source of suffering? The wisdom here lies in the truth of impermanence we have just explored. Because all things are impermanent, every pleasant experience, by its very nature, must come to an end. The joy of a perfect summer day, the pleasure of a delicious meal, the vibrant energy of a youthful body, the happiness of being with a loved one, these are all wonderful. But because we know, even unconsciously, that they will not last forever, they contain within them the seed of a future pain. The more we cling to the pleasant experience, the more tightly we grasp it, the more we will suffer when it changes or fades. The joy of our physical strength is shadowed by the knowledge that it will one day decline. The sweetness of a moment is tinged with the sadness of its passing. This is the dukkha that underlies our endless pursuit of pleasure and our desperate attempts to preserve our youth. We are trying to make permanent what is inherently temporary, and this struggle itself is a source of deep, unending stress. We are trying to build a castle of happiness on the shifting sands of time. The The problem is not the pleasant experience itself, but our attachment to it, our demand that it never change. The third and most profound form of dukkha is called sankhara dukkha. This can be understood as the suffering of conditioned existence or the pervasive background unsatisfactoriness of life itself. This is the most subtle hum of all. It points to a fundamental instability in our very existence. Everything we experience, our body, our thoughts, our emotions, our world, is conditioned, meaning it arises because of a confluence of other changing conditions. Our body depends on food, water, and air. Our happiness depends on external circumstances or internal states. Because every single component of our experience is unstable and in flux, our entire sense of self is inherently unstable. There is nothing solid and permanent to stand on. This is the source of that deep, often unnamed, existential anxiety. It is the feeling that no matter how much we achieve, how much we acquire, or how much we are loved, it is never quite enough to give us a lasting, unshakable sense of security and well-being. It is the quiet restlessness that makes us check our phones, seek the next distraction, or plan the next purchase, always hoping that the next thing will finally fill the void. This sankhara dukkha is the deepest root of our fear of aging, because aging is the ultimate confirmation of this truth. It demonstrates, beyond any doubt, that the foundation of our conditioned self is not solid ground, but a flowing river. There is a powerful parable that illustrates how we can work with these truths. The Buddha said that life will sometimes shoot an arrow at us. Getting sick, growing old, losing someone we love. These are first arrows. They are painful, and they are largely outside of our control. They are the dukkha of life, the unavoidable pains. A foolish person, upon being struck by this first arrow, becomes distraught. They cry out, "Why me? This is terrible. I can't bear it." They worry incessantly about the wound. They become angry at the archer. They fall into despair about their fate. In doing all this, they take out a second arrow and shoot it into themselves in the very same spot. This second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is our fear, our resentment, our self-pity, our obsessive thinking. The pain of the first arrow is real, but the pain of the second arrow is optional. It is self-created. The wise person, when struck by the first arrow, still feels the pain. They do not deny it, but they do not shoot the second arrow. They calmly acknowledge the pain of the first arrow and say, "A painful feeling has arisen." They tend to the wound with care and compassion, without adding a layer of mental anguish on top of it. The path of awakening is not about becoming immune to the first arrow of life. It is about learning to stop shooting ourselves with the second. Seeing our lives through this lens is not a pessimistic act. It is, in fact, an act of profound optimism and compassion. To acknowledge the truth of dukkha is the first step toward its end. It is like going to a wise and caring physician. The physician's first job is to make an accurate diagnosis. They must say, "Here is the nature of the illness." This is not a cruel declaration, but a necessary and hopeful one. A diagnosis is not a verdict. It is the beginning of the cure. By telling us the truth of dukkha, the Buddha was not saying that life is hopeless. He was saying, "I see your suffering. I understand its causes, and because I understand it, I can show you the way to heal." This is the great hope at the heart of the teaching. Our fear of aging, our constant anxiety, is not a permanent sentence. It is a treatable condition. Our mistake is that we have been using the wrong medicine. We try to cure our dukkha by chasing more pleasant experiences, by distracting ourselves with entertainment, by trying to numb the fear with fleeting pleasures. This, the teachings tell us, is like drinking salt water to quench a thirst. It may provide a moment of relief, but it ultimately worsens the underlying condition. deepening our attachment and our inevitable disappointment. We have now seen that our fear is rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding, a resistance to the truths of impermanence and unsatisfactoriness. We see that much of our suffering is not caused by life itself, but by the second arrows of our own reactions. We have been given a diagnosis, and with it, the hope of a cure. This naturally leads to the next crucial question on our journey. If this suffering, this second arrow, is something we create ourselves, where exactly does it come from? What is the source of the clinging, the resistance, the fear, and the stories we tell ourselves? The answer points us directly toward the next area of our investigation, the intricate, powerful, and often untamed realm of our own mind. We have seen that the arrow of aging is an unavoidable part of life, but the second arrow, the one of our own making, is the true source of our fear and suffering. We now arrive at a pivotal point in our journey, for we must ask, where is this second arrow kept? What is the bow that fires it with such painful accuracy? The teachings of the Buddha point us to one single, inescapable source, the human mind. The mind is not a simple window through which we view a fixed and objective reality. It is an active, restless, and incredibly powerful creator. It is a storyteller, a spinner of tales, constantly weaving narratives to make sense of the raw data of our experience. And when it turns its gaze upon the subject of aging, this masterful storyteller often becomes a writer of ghost stories, of tragedies, of tales filled with dread and foreboding. The suffering we feel is not written into the fabric of time itself, but into the fabric of the stories we tell ourselves about time. This internal narrator works tirelessly, often without our conscious permission. It takes a small, neutral fact and builds an entire universe of fear around it. For instance, you might forget a name that was once familiar. This is a simple fact, a momentary lapse in recall, but the storyteller mind immediately leaps into action. It whispers a tale. This is the first sign of dementia. My mind is beginning to fail. Soon I will not be able to recognize my own family. I will become helpless, a shell of my former self, a burden on everyone I love. The story is vivid, emotional, and terrifyingly convincing. Or perhaps you feel a new sense of fatigue after an activity you once did with ease. The fact is simply a change in energy levels, but the mind story is far more dramatic. My vitality is gone forever. I am becoming frail and useless. The world of activity, of joy, of engagement is now closing its doors to me, one by one. Ahead lies only decline and passivity. These stories are not reality. They are projections. They are anxious fantasies about a future that has not happened and may never happen in the way we imagine. Yet, we react to them as if they were true right now, and our bodies flood with the stress and fear appropriate for an immediate threat. We live in the horror story, not in the simple reality of the present moment. The first profound step toward freedom is learning to make a clear distinction between the raw data of reality and the mind's interpretation of it. This is the act of untangling fact from fiction. Let us practice this for a moment. A fact is something you can observe directly with your senses without adding a layer of judgment or prediction. A story is the meaning, the fear, the conclusion that the mind attaches to that fact. For example, the fact is, there are more wrinkles around my eyes than there were 10 years ago. This is an observable, neutral reality. The story is, I look old and worn out. I am no longer beautiful. I am becoming invisible to the world. Can you feel the difference? The fact has no inherent emotional charge. The story is laden with dukkha, with suffering. Another fact, my doctor has advised me to watch my blood pressure. The story, my body is betraying me. It's all downhill from here. I am now a sick person, and I will live in constant fear of a heart attack. The fact is a piece of information. The story is a self-imposed sentence of anxiety. Our work is not to deny the fact. We are not engaging in wishful thinking. Our work is to recognize the stories as stories. They are mental creations, not divine prophecies. When we can see a story as just a story, it loses its hypnotic power over us. We no longer have to believe it. The Buddhist tradition has a wonderfully apt metaphor for the nature of this untrained mind. It is called the monkey mind. Imagine a restless monkey in a vast forest. It cannot stay still for more than a second. It screeches and chatters, and with incredible speed, it swings from one branch to another, never at rest. One moment, it swings to a branch of the past, chattering about a mistake you made 20 years ago. The next, it swings far into the future, screeching about a potential illness. Then it swings to a branch of comparison, looking at others and chattering about all the ways you don't measure up. It swings to a branch of judgment, then to one of desire, then back to one of fear. This is the chaotic, undisciplined energy of our own minds. It is not your personal failing that your mind behaves this way. It is simply the nature of a mind that has not been trained in stillness. The problem arises when we mistake the frantic, panicked chattering of this monkey for the voice of truth. We treat its every fearful screech as an urgent and accurate report on reality. We allow this inner monkey to be the master of our emotional house, and it runs wild, creating chaos and exhaustion. There is a tale told of a man who walked through his life with a constant look of strain and exhaustion on his face. He was hunched over, as if carrying a great weight. A wise person saw him and approached, noticing that the man was, in fact, carrying a large, heavy rock strapped to his back. The wise one asked him, "Friend, why do you carry such a heavy burden?" The man looked surprised, as if he had never considered the question. He replied, "I don't know. I suppose I have always carried it. It feels like it is a part of me. The thought of putting it down has never even occurred to me." The wise person simply smiled and said, "You know, you can put it down whenever you choose." The man, stunned by this simple revelation, slowly unstrapped the rock and let it fall to the ground. As he stood up straight for the first time in years, he felt an incredible lightness, a freedom he had never imagined possible. That heavy rock is the collection of anxious stories we carry about aging, stories of fear, of loss, of decline. We have been carrying them for so long. We have become so identified with their weight that we assume they are an inseparable part of who we are. We forget that we picked them up in the first place, and we forget that we have the power to put them down. So how do we put the rock down? How do we calm the monkey mind? We do not do it by fighting with it. Arguing with the monkey only makes it screech louder. Trying to forcibly suppress our thoughts is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It will inevitably pop back up with even greater force. The path of wisdom offers a gentler and far more effective approach. We learn to simply watch. We change our position from being in the story to being the observer of the story. We can visualize our core awareness as a vast, open, peaceful blue sky. The thoughts and feelings that arise are like clouds passing through that sky. Some are light and fluffy, some are dark and stormy. But no matter what kind of cloud appears, the sky itself is not harmed. The sky does not cling to the white clouds or fight the dark ones. It simply allows them to arise, to be present for a time, and to pass away, all within its own vast, accepting embrace. Our practice is to learn to rest as the sky, not as the clouds. When a fearful thought about aging drifts into your awareness, you can learn to say to yourself, "Ah, here is a cloud of fear. I see it." You notice its texture, its shape, its emotional color, But you don't have to climb into it and get tossed around by its winds. You simply watch it drift. This is the beginning of disidentification. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness in which the thoughts are appearing. We have now seen that the mind itself, through its relentless storytelling and its monkey-like restlessness, is the architect of our fear. It takes the neutral facts of life and weaves them into heavy burdens of anxiety. But we have also discovered the profound secret to our own liberation. We don't have to believe the stories. We can learn to put down the rock. We can learn to rest as the sky and watch the clouds pass. But acknowledging this is one thing, and being able to do it in the midst of a mental storm is another. The habit of identifying with our thoughts is strong and deeply ingrained. The monkey mind is powerful and persistent. To be able to sit calmly and observe our thoughts requires a certain stability, a certain mental muscle. We need an anchor that can hold us steady when the winds of fear begin to blow. What is this anchor? What is the fundamental tool we must cultivate to bring this gentle, watchful awareness into our lives? This question leads us directly to the very foundation of this entire path, the practice that makes all other insights possible, the simple, radical, and transformative art of mindfulness. We have seen that the mind, with its restless, storytelling nature, is the very source of the second arrow, the architect of our anxiety about aging. We have discovered that we are not our thoughts, and that we do not have to believe every fearful story that arises. But this knowledge alone can feel like standing on the shore, watching a stormy sea, knowing we don't have to drown but still feeling the spray and hearing the roar. To find true peace, we need to learn how to build a boat, or better yet, how to find the unshakable anchor that is already within us. This anchor has a name. It is called mindfulness. The word has become common, but its depth is often missed. Mindfulness, in its essence, is the art of paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, and without judgment. It is simple, but it is not easy. It is the radical act of showing up for your own life, exactly as it is, without needing it to be different. It is not about emptying the mind or stopping your thoughts. That is an impossible task. It is about learning to hold your thoughts with a spacious, gentle awareness, rather than being held by them. The power of mindfulness lies in its ability to bring us home to the present moment. Think about the nature of fear and anxiety. Where does it live? Anxiety is a phantom of the future. It is the what-if story. What if I get sick? What if I fall? What if I am alone? Regret and sorrow, its close cousins, are ghosts of the past. If only I had done things differently. I miss the way things were. The chattering monkey mind almost never lives in the here and now. It thrives on time travel, on speculation about what is to come, and rumination on what has been. But the present moment itself, this very sliver of time, is a sanctuary. In the pure, sensory reality of this single breath, of the feeling of the chair beneath you, of the sound of my voice reaching your ears, there is no anxiety. The fear is a thought about the future, not a reality in the present. Mindfulness is the practice of deliberately withdrawing our attention from the imaginary worlds of past and future and anchoring it firmly in the living reality of the now. It is the only place life ever truly happens, and mindfulness is the key that unlocks its door. The most direct way to cultivate this skill is through the formal practice of mindfulness of breath, or anapanasati. Let's explore how this is done. You can begin by finding a comfortable posture, perhaps sitting on a chair with your feet flat on the floor and your spine upright but not stiff. You can let your eyes gently close, or keep them half open with a soft, unfocused gaze. The invitation is to be dignified, yet relaxed. Now, simply bring your attention to the physical sensation of your breathing. You don't need to change it, control it or judge it as good or bad. Just feel it. Perhaps you notice the sensation of the air entering and leaving your nostrils, a subtle coolness on the in-breath, a slight warmth on the out-breath, or maybe you feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest or abdomen. Choose one spot and let it be your anchor. The mind is like a small boat on a vast ocean. The thoughts, emotions, and stories are the winds and the waves, constantly trying to push the boat here and there. The breath is your heavy, reliable anchor, dropped to the quiet depths of the ocean floor. When the winds of worry begin to blow, you gently, firmly, turn your attention back to the simple, physical reality of the anchor. Inevitably, your mind will wander. This is not a mistake. It is not a sign that you are failing at the practice. It is simply what minds do. The monkey will start to swing. A thought about a task for tomorrow will arise, and your attention will follow it. The moment you realize this has happened, that is the moment of mindfulness. In that moment of seeing, my mind has wandered, you have already woken up. And then, the practice is this. With infinite patience and kindness, without any scolding or judgment, you gently escort your attention back to the anchor of the breath. You might have to do this 10 times in a minute, or 100 times. It does not matter. The practice is not in staying perfectly still. The practice is the returning. Each time you notice you've drifted, and you kindly return, you are strengthening your muscle of attention. You are training the monkey mind, not through punishment, but through gentle, persistent guidance. This act of returning, over and over, is an act of profound self-compassion. While formal sitting practice is powerful, the true aim of mindfulness is to bring this quality of attention into every moment of our lives. You can transform any routine activity into a profound meditation. When you walk, you can practice mindful walking. Instead of being lost in thought, planning your next move, bring your attention to the soles of your feet. Feel the sensation of your foot pressing into the ground, lifting off, and moving through space. Feel the rhythm of your body, the air on your skin. You are simply walking, fully present for the act of walking, or consider the act of eating. So often, we eat on autopilot, barely tasting our food. Try eating one meal, or even one bite, with full mindfulness. Look at the food, see its colors and textures. Smell its aroma. When you take a bite, chew slowly. Notice the explosion of flavors, the sensation of the food in your mouth. You may discover that you have not truly tasted your food in years. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh spoke of this with the simple story of washing the dishes. He said that while you are washing the dishes, you should only be washing the dishes. This means you are not rushing through them to get to the next thing, like having a cup of tea. If you are thinking about the tea while washing the dishes, you are not truly alive during that time. And when you finally get to your tea, you will likely be thinking about the next thing and the next. You will miss the tea as well. He taught that the miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the green earth, to be fully present, to wash the dishes and be completely one with the act of washing the dishes. This is how we stop our lives from becoming a blur of anxious striving. We find our life, our peace, our joy, right here in this simple, present act. Now, let us bring this practice directly to the experience of the aging body. So much of our fear is tied to the new and often unpleasant sensations that arise. A chronic ache, a sudden stiffness, a loss of balance. Our habit is to immediately label these sensations as bad, to resist them, to create a story of decline around them. Mindfulness offers a radically different approach. When a painful sensation arises, instead of recoiling, you can try to bring a gentle, curious awareness to it. You can investigate it as pure sensation. What is it really, without the label pain? Is it a feeling of heat, of tightness? Is it sharp or dull? Is it constant, or does it pulse and change? By observing it in this way, without judgment, you stop adding the second arrow of mental suffering. You are not fighting the sensation anymore. You are simply allowing it to be there, holding it in a spacious, kind awareness. This does not mean the physical sensation will magically disappear, although sometimes releasing the resistance can lessen its intensity. What it truly does is change your relationship to it. You can learn to befriend your body with all its changes and imperfections. It ceases to be an enemy territory to be conquered and becomes a home to be cared for, listened to, and inhabited with grace. So, mindfulness is the anchor. It is the practice of returning again and again to the sanctuary of the present moment. It is the tool that allows us to watch the stories of the mind without getting swept away. It is the foundation upon which all other wisdom can be built. By cultivating this stable, non-judgmental awareness, we have equipped ourselves to go even deeper. We have spent so much of our lives worrying about me and my story, my youth, my health, my identity. We have been so fiercely protective of this self. But now, with the clarity and stillness that mindfulness provides, we can dare to ask the most fundamental question of all. Who or what is this self that we are so afraid of losing? Is this solid, continuous me that I take for granted as real as I think it is? This investigation will take us into the very heart of Buddhist wisdom, to the liberating and often misunderstood teaching of no self. With the anchor of mindfulness holding us steady in the present moment, we have found a refuge from the storms of anxious thought. We have created a space of stillness. Now, from this place of newfound stability, we can dare to ask the deepest and most provocative question on this entire path of awakening. For our whole lives, we have operated on a single, fundamental assumption. We have assumed that there is a solid, continuous me at the center of our experience. It is this me who was born, this me who is living, and this me who fears growing old and dying. We say, I am getting older, and we feel the truth of it in our bones. But who, precisely, is this I? Is it as solid, as stable, and as real as we have always believed? The Buddhist teaching of anatta, or no self, invites us into a profound investigation of this question. This teaching is not a nihilistic denial of our existence. It does not claim that you do not exist. Rather, it asks us to look with radical honesty at the nature of our existence. The fear of aging is, at its core, the fear of the self being diminished, damaged, or ultimately extinguished. So, to free ourselves from the fear, we must first understand the one who is afraid. The Buddha approached this inquiry like a master scientist. Instead of starting with an assumption, he chose to observe experience directly. He taught that what we call a person, or a self, can be broken down into 5 distinct interacting processes. These are known as the 5 aggregates, or the 5 skandhas. The word skandha means a heap or bundle. The teaching suggests that what we mistake for a solid self is, in fact, just a temporary bundling together of these 5 heaps of changing processes. Let us look at each one, for within them lies the key to unraveling our deepest fear. The first aggregate is form, or rupa. This is the physical stuff of our existence, our body. It includes our skin, bones, hair, organs, everything, from our flesh to the slightest tingling sensation. We are deeply identified with this aggregate. We look in the mirror and say, that's me. When our body is young, vibrant, and healthy, we feel I am strong. When it begins to show signs of age wrinkles, gray hair, aches and pains, we feel I am declining. But what is this body, really? Is it a fixed entity? Science and our own observation tell us no. It is a process of constant change. It is composed of the four great elements: the earth element of solidity, the water element of cohesion, the fire element of temperature, and the air element of motion. We are constantly exchanging these elements with the world around us. We consume food, water, and air, and our body transforms them. Old cells die, new cells are born. The body you have today is not the same body you had a decade ago. It is more like a wave in the ocean than a statue in a museum. It is a temporary form, borrowed from the earth, and destined to return to the earth. To see this is to see that the body is a process we are experiencing, not a permanent self that we possess. The second aggregate is feeling, or Vedana. This refers to the raw sensations that arise whenever there is contact between our senses and the world. These feelings are categorized into three types: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. A cool breeze on a hot day is a pleasant feeling. The ache in a sore muscle is an unpleasant feeling. The sensation of your clothes against your skin might be neutral. We identify powerfully with these feelings. We say, I am happy, or I am sad. The fear of aging is deeply connected to this aggregate. We fear losing the pleasant feelings associated with youth and experiencing more of the unpleasant feelings associated with illness and decay. But if we watch our feelings with mindfulness, we see they are like bubbles on the surface of water. They arise, shimmer for a moment, and pop. They are completely dependent on conditions, and they are utterly impermanent. No feeling lasts forever. Since feelings are so fleeting and unreliable, how can they possibly be a solid, enduring self? The third aggregate is perception, or sana. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes, labels, and forms concepts about what we are sensing. When light hits our eyes, the aggregate of form registers it. When a pleasant feeling arises, Vedana registers it. But it is perception, sana, that says, that is a beautiful sunset. It's the part of the mind that identifies, this is a wrinkle, that sound is a bird. This thought is fear. It creates our mental map of the world. We believe that there is a single, continuous I doing all this perceiving and labeling. But perception, too, is a conditioned process. What we perceive is colored by our past experiences, our mood, and our cultural conditioning. Two people can look at the same aging face in the mirror and perceive two entirely different things. One sees decay and failure. The other sees a map of a life lived, a sign of wisdom. Perception is a flickering, interpretive process, not a stable, objective self. The fourth aggregate is mental formations, or sankhara. This is a very broad and important category. It includes all of our volitional activities, our mental habits, our opinions, prejudices, desires, aversions, and intentions. It is the chattering of the monkey mind, the spinning of stories. This is where our personality seems to reside. When we say, I am an anxious person, or I am a creative person, we are identifying with these mental formations. Our fear of aging is composed of countless mental formations, worries about the future, judgments about our changing body, desires to be young again. But like all the other aggregates, these are just transient mental events. A thought is not a solid thing. An opinion can change. A habit can be broken. They are patterns of energy, not a permanent essence. There is no one in charge of them. They simply arise in response to conditions. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness, or vijnana. This is the raw faculty of awareness, the knowing quality that allows us to be conscious of all the other aggregates. There is eye consciousness that knows sight, ear consciousness that knows sound, and mind consciousness that knows thoughts and feelings. It is tempting to think that this awareness, this knowing, must be the real me, the ultimate observer. But the Buddha pointed out that consciousness, too, is a dependent process. It does not exist on its own. I consciousness arises only when there is an I and a visible form. Mind consciousness arises only when there is a mind and a thought. It is not a monolithic, unchanging light of awareness. It is a flickering, moment-to-moment process, arising and ceasing with every new experience. A famous story from the Buddhist texts illustrates this perfectly. A sage named Nagasena was questioned by the Greek king Melinda. The king asked, "What is your name?" The sage replied, "I am known as Nagasena, but this is just a name, a designation. There is no permanent person to be found here." The king, a sharp logician, was baffled. He asked, "If there is no person, who wears these robes? Who eats? Who sleeps?" Nagasena responded by asking the king about his chariot. "Your Majesty, did you walk here, or did you come in a chariot?" The king replied that he came in a chariot. "Then," said Nagasena, "show me the chariot. Is the chariot the wheels? Is it the axle? Is it the wooden frame? Or the reins?" To each question, the king replied, "No, venerable sir." Then, Nagasena concluded, "Is the chariot something other than its parts?" Chariot is simply a convenient name we give to this particular assembly of parts. When they are put together in this way, we call it a chariot. But there is no inherent chariot soul to be found. Nagasena then declared, "Just so, Your Majesty. Nagasena is a convenient name for the temporary coming together of the five aggregates. But if you search for a permanent, independent self among them, it cannot be found. So what we call self is a process, not an entity. It is more like a river than a statue. A river has a name, like the Thames or the Amazon, and it has a continuity over time, but it is never the same for 2 consecutive moments. It is a constant, dynamic flow of new water. You are that river. What we call you is the unbroken flow of these 5 processes, constantly interacting, constantly changing. Aging is not the decay of a static object. It is the natural, continuous, and unavoidable flowing of the river. At first, this idea can feel frightening or destabilizing, but if we sit with it, we can begin to feel its profound, liberating power. The entire project of our life has been to protect and defend this imaginary, solid self. We polish it, we promote it, and we live in mortal fear of its destruction. This is an exhausting, lifelong task, and it is doomed to fail. To see that there is no fixed self to defend is to be able to finally put down this immense burden. If there is no statue, we can stop worrying about it getting chipped. If there is only a flowing river, we can stop trying to dam it up and instead learn to appreciate its movement and its beauty. The fear of being annihilated at death begins to lose its sting, for we see there was never a fixed thing to be annihilated in the first place, only a process that is changing form. This insight does not lead to apathy. It leads to a deeper kind of engagement with life. But it does raise a crucial question. If there is no permanent me to grasp onto, how then should we relate to this mind-body process that we experience as our life? If it is not a possession to be guarded, what is it? It is a precious, fleeting, and interconnected phenomenon. It is not something to be owned, but something to be cared for. This realization turns our attention away from the anxious act of self-preservation and toward the open-hearted act of care. And this care has a name. It is karuna. It is compassion. The teaching of no self can feel like the ground has been pulled out from under our feet. If there is no solid, continuous me, then what is left? If we are just a fleeting collection of processes, a bundle of changing heaps, does anything matter? This is a natural reaction, a vertigo that arises when one of our most fundamental assumptions about reality is challenged. But the path of wisdom does not leave us in this empty space. It shows us that when we let go of the frantic, lifelong project of defending an imaginary self, something far more beautiful and authentic can emerge. That something is care. The natural response to seeing the fragile, impermanent, and conditioned nature of our own existence is not despair, but a profound and boundless tenderness. This tenderness has a name. It is karuna, or compassion. It is the heartfelt answer to the question, how should I treat this selfless, ever-changing process of body and mind? And the answer is, with kindness, with a gentle, unwavering friendship. For most of us, this is the exact opposite of our habitual response. We live with a relentless inner critic, a harsh judge who sits in the mind and presides over the trial of our life. This inner critic is especially cruel when it comes to the subject of aging. It points out every flaw, every failure, every sign of decline with a merciless voice. It looks at a new wrinkle and says, "You are becoming ugly." It notices a moment of forgetfulness and says, "You are losing your mind." It feels a new physical limitation and says, "You are becoming weak and useless." We would never dream of speaking to a dear friend in this way. We would never sit by their side as they struggled and berate them for their imperfections. Yet, we do it to ourselves constantly. This stream of harsh self-judgment, of criticism, of shame and disgust directed at our own changing bodies is a form of inner violence. It is a constant infliction of the second arrow. It creates a state of internal warfare, making it impossible to find peace. The practice of compassion is the declaration of a ceasefire in this war. It is the revolutionary act of deciding to become your own ally, your own closest and most trusted friend, especially as you navigate the inevitable challenges of growing older. It is crucial to understand what this compassion, this karuna, truly is. It is not self-pity. Pity often involves a sense of being a poor, helpless victim and can lead to a state of resignation and despair. It is also not sentimentality or a kind of fluffy, feel-good emotion. Karuna is a far more courageous and resilient quality of the heart. The ancient texts describe it as the trembling or quivering of the heart in the face of suffering. It is a deep, visceral resonance with pain, whether it is our own or that of another. But it doesn't stop there. This trembling is fused with a strong, unwavering aspiration. May this suffering be relieved. May you be free from this pain. When we apply karuna to ourselves, it is the ability to turn towards our own difficulties, our fear, our physical pain, our grief over lost youth and hold them with a warm, spacious, and non-judgmental presence. It is the ability to stay with ourselves when we are hurting, rather than abandoning ourselves through distraction or numbing. It is the voice that whispers, "I am here with you in this pain. We will get through this together." It is the ultimate act of friendship. The foundation for developing this powerful compassion is the practice of metta, or loving kindness. Metta is the systematic cultivation of goodwill, a gentle warmth that we can first learn to direct toward ourselves. Let's explore how this is done. You can find a comfortable posture, a position that embodies both dignity and ease. Close your eyes and allow yourself to simply be here. For a few moments, just rest with the feeling of your breath. Then, bring an image of yourself into your mind's eye. It can be you as you are now, or perhaps as a vulnerable young child. You are not judging this image, simply holding it gently in your awareness. Now, begin to silently offer a few phrases of well-wishing, like a gift from your own heart to yourself. The classic phrases are a good place to start. The first phrase is, "May I be safe." Feel the intention behind these words. It is a wish for safety from outer harm, but more deeply, it is a wish for safety from inner harm, from the cruelty of your own judgment and fear. It is a wish to be protected within the sanctuary of your own kindness. The second phrase is, "May I be healthy." This is a wish for the well-being of your body and your mind to the best of their ability. It is not a demand for perfect health, which is impossible, but a sincere aspiration for strength, vitality, and balance, accepting the conditions that are present. The third phrase is, "May I be happy." This is not a wish for fleeting pleasures, but for a deep and authentic happiness, the kind of well-being that comes from a peaceful heart and a wise mind. It is the wish to be free from the inner causes of suffering. The final phrase is, "May I live with ease." This is a wish to move through the world and through this process of aging with less struggle, less resistance, less tension. It is a wish for a life of grace, balance, and peace. You repeat these phrases gently, silently, letting them sink in. It is very important to know that you do not have to force a particular feeling. Some days, you may feel nothing but the mechanical repetition of the words. Other days, a warmth may arise. The practice is not about the immediate result. The practice is in the sincerity of the offering. You are planting seeds of kindness in the garden of your own heart. With patient, persistent watering, they will eventually grow. There is a powerful story that illustrates the nature of true compassion. One day, the Buddha came across a monastery where a monk named Putigata Tissa was gravely ill. He was suffering from a terrible skin disease. His robes were stuck to his body with oozing, foul, smelling sores. The other monks, repulsed by his condition, had abandoned him completely. Without a moment of hesitation, the Buddha began to boil water. He then approached the sick monk, and with his own hands, he gently began to bathe him, loosening the soiled robes, cleaning his wounds, and applying medicine. As he tended to the monk's broken body, he taught him the Dharma, the timeless truths of existence. This story is a profound teaching. Compassion does not turn away from what is messy, unpleasant, or broken. It does not recoil in disgust from the imperfect. It moves toward the suffering with an unwavering intention to care and to heal. We must learn to become the Buddha to our own Putigata Tissato, the parts of ourselves that we have abandoned. We must be willing to gently bathe the wounds of our own aging, to tend to our aches and pains with kindness, to care for the parts of ourselves we have deemed unlovable, rather than leaving them to suffer alone in a corner of our mind. This brings the practice of compassion directly into our relationship with our body. For so many years, this body has been our faithful, silent companion. It has carried us through every joy and every sorrow. It has done its absolute best to serve us, within the limits of its conditioning and genetics. It has never once been separate from us. Now, as it changes, as it speaks to us in new languages of aches, stiffness, and fatigue, it is not asking for our judgment. It is asking for our kindness. It is not a machine that is failing. It is a loyal friend entering a new season of life. We can learn to express this kindness in simple, tangible ways. When you feel an ache, instead of tensing up against it, you can place a warm hand on that area and just breathe. You can send a silent message. I am here with you. Thank you for all you do. When you look in the mirror, instead of cataloging the flaws, you can try to look into your own eyes and offer a silent phrase of metta. May you be happy. These small, repeated acts of kindness can fundamentally transform your experience of inhabiting your body. You are no longer at war with it. You are at peace. When we cultivate this profound friendship with ourselves, when we learn to hold our own suffering with a tender heart, a remarkable thing begins to happen. The harshness we directed at ourselves begins to dissolve. The tight knot of self-judgment starts to loosen. We become more forgiving of our own perceived failings, past and present. This softening does not remain confined within us. A heart that has learned to be kind to itself cannot help but be kind to others. But before it expands outward, this new gentleness gives us the courage to look at the burdens we carry from our own past, the regrets, the sorrows, the old wounds. With the armor of self-criticism removed, we can now approach this inner landscape not with fear, but with the same compassionate gaze we have been cultivating. We are now ready to perform the gentle, liberating work of letting go. Having cultivated a space of kindness for ourselves, a warm and friendly heart, we now have the courage to look at the heavy baggage we have been carrying for decades. We often think of aging as an accumulation of years, but it can also be an accumulation of weight, not just physical weight, but the immense psychic weight of the past. This baggage, carried in the mind, can be so heavy, it prevents us from walking with any lightness in the present. It comes in two main forms. The first are the golden chains of nostalgia, the beautiful, heavy memories of a past we cling to. The second are the iron chains of regret, the cold, heavy weight of old hurts, resentments, and mistakes. Both, in their own way, keep us tethered to a time that no longer exists, preventing us from truly inhabiting the only time we ever have, right now. The golden chains of nostalgia can seem harmless, even pleasant. It is sweet to remember the strength and vitality of our youth, the excitement of a first love, the triumphs of our career, or a time when our children were young and life seemed full of a certain kind of promise. There is nothing wrong with cherishing memories. They are part of the rich tapestry of our lives. The problem arises when we build a permanent home in the past. We begin to compare the reality of our present with a glorified, edited version of our past, and the present inevitably falls short. We look at our aging body and long for the one we had at 25. We look at the quiet of our current life and mourn the bustling activity of our 30s. This constant comparison is a recipe for dissatisfaction. It is a subtle form of suffering, where the memory of a past pleasure creates a very real present pain. The practice of letting go, in this context, is not about erasing our beautiful memories. It is about learning to hold them as one would hold a precious, old photograph. We can look at it with love and appreciation. We can honor the moment it represents, but we do not try to crawl inside the picture and live there. We acknowledge its beauty, and then we gently place it back in the album, returning our full attention to the life that is breathing and unfolding right in front of us. More painful, and often more binding, are the iron chains of regret and resentment. Our minds can become museums of old wounds. We walk through the halls day after day, looking at the exhibits. Here is the exhibit of the mistake I made that ruined everything. Here is the hall of the unkind words I can never take back. And over here is the large wing dedicated to how they wronged me, where we keep detailed records of every hurt and betrayal we have ever suffered. We spend countless hours of our present moment energy polishing these exhibits, replaying the scenes, feeling the old anger, the old guilt, the old shame, as if it were all happening today. This mental rumination does not heal anything. It is the very act of picking at a scab, ensuring the wound can never properly close and turn into a scar. It is a tremendous waste of our precious life force. The past itself is gone. It is untouchable, unchangeable. It exists now only as memory traces, as flickering thought forms and emotional patterns in our own minds and bodies. We cannot go back and alter the events, but we can, in this present moment, change our relationship to them. We can choose to stop carrying the weight of it all. The key that unlocks these iron chains is the courageous practice of forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood concepts. We often think it means condoning a harmful action, saying that what happened was okay. This is not it at all. We also think it is something we do for the other person. This is also not the primary reason. Forgiveness is, first and foremost, an act of profound self-liberation. Holding on to resentment and anger is like drinking a cup of poison and waiting for the other person to die. The only one who suffers from the poison of our bitterness is ourselves. To forgive another person is to make a conscious choice, for our own sake, to put down the heavy burden of anger. It is a declaration that we will no longer allow a past event to poison our present peace. It is something we can practice formally. We can sit quietly, bring to mind a person or situation that has caused us pain, and acknowledge the pain. We don't deny it. Then, we can silently repeat phrases like, "I see the pain this has caused me. For my own peace of heart, I release you from the prison of my anger. I will no longer carry this weight for you. I wish you well." This act can feel impossible at first, but with gentle repetition, it can begin to dissolve the hardest knots of resentment in our hearts. Even more challenging, for many of us, is the act of forgiving ourselves. We can be our own harshest judges, holding ourselves to impossible standards and endlessly punishing ourselves for past mistakes. Here, the compassion we have been cultivating becomes essential. We can learn to look back at our younger selves not with condemnation, but with understanding. We acted from the level of wisdom, fear, and conditioning that we had at that time. We did the best we could with the tools we possessed. To practice self-forgiveness, you can visualize yourself at the time of the mistake you regret. See the confusion, the pain, or the ignorance that you were in. Then, with all the warmth you can muster, you can extend your heart to that younger self. You can say, silently, "I see you, I see your struggle. You did the best, you knew how. I forgive you." You are released from this burden of guilt. You are free to be at peace. This is not an excuse for harmful behavior, but an acceptance of our human imperfection. It is the act of inner amnesty that finally allows the old wounds to heal. There is a classic Zen story that beautifully illustrates this principle of letting go. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long journey. They came to a river where the current was strong and the muddy banks were steep. A young woman in fine clothes stood there, afraid to cross for fear of ruining her dress. Without a word, the senior monk walked up to her, lifted her into his arms, carried her across the swirling river, and gently set her down on the other side. He then continued on his way. The junior monk was aghast. He hurried to catch up, his mind spinning. The monastic rules were perfectly clear. A monk must never touch a woman. For the next several hours, they walked in silence, but the junior monk was seething. He was replaying the scene, judging his master, feeling indignant. Finally, he could bear it no longer. He burst out, "Master, how could you do that? You broke a sacred rule. You are forbidden to touch a woman, and yet you carried her in your arms." The senior monk looked at his troubled companion with a calm, gentle gaze and said, "I put that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story shines a light into our own minds. We are all the junior monk. We carry people, situations, regrets, and grievances in our minds for hours, days, years, even decades after they are over. We allow the dead past to dictate the quality of our living present. Letting go is the simple, profound act of putting the woman down. It is the recognition that the event is over, and the only place it now lives is in our own repetitive thinking. To let go is not to forget. It is not to develop a convenient amnesia. It is to refuse to allow the past to define you. The beauty of this path is the realization that every single day, every single moment, is an opportunity to begin anew. The person you were yesterday, or 10 years ago, does not have to be the person you are right now. You are not the fixed sum of your past experiences. You are the living, breathing potential of this present moment. This perspective brings an incredible lightness and freedom to life at any age. It means that your life is not over, your story is not finished. In this moment, You can choose to put down the golden chains of nostalgia and the iron chains of regret and step forward into your life, unburdened. We have now done the courageous work of clearing the space behind us, of releasing our attachment to the past. A great weight has been lifted, but the restless monkey mind, if not swinging to the branch of the past, has another favorite destination. It loves to swing to the branch of the future. Having put down the heavy baggage of what has been, we must now learn to address the equally heavy baggage of what might be. We must learn to release our anxious, controlling grip on a future that has not yet been born. This requires us to look deeply at our desire for control and to cultivate the wisdom of surrender. Having done the courageous work of looking into our past, of unburdening ourselves from the golden chains of nostalgia and the iron chains of regret, a new sense of space may begin to dawn in the mind. There is a lightness that comes from putting down such heavy bags, but the restless monkey mind, ever in motion, having been discouraged from swinging backward into the past, now leaps with all its energy forward into the future, and here it finds a new and equally heavy burden to pick up. The burden of control. Our fear of aging is inextricably bound to our fear of the future. And our fear of the future is, at its heart, a fear of losing control. We fear losing control of our health, our finances, our mobility, our cognitive faculties, and our independence. And so, we spend a vast amount of our present moment energy trying to manage, predict, and manipulate a future that is, by its very nature, fundamentally unknowable and uncontrollable. Our culture champions the planner, the strategist, the one who foresees every contingency. We are taught from a young age that security comes from having a solid plan, and while prudent preparation has its place, this impulse, when driven by fear, can metastasize into a neurotic obsession. We create intricate mental blueprints of how our later years should look. We build timelines and set expectations for our health, our relationships, and our level of activity. Then, when the unpredictable reality of life inevitably deviates from our blueprint, we suffer. We feel that life has failed us, or that we have failed ourselves. This desire for control manifests as worry. Worry is the mind's frantic attempt to rehearse for a negative future. We lie awake at night, running through every possible worst-case scenario. What if my savings run out? What if I have a bad fall? What if I get a terrible diagnosis? We believe, on some subconscious level, that if we can just think through every possible catastrophe, we can somehow prevent it, or at least be prepared. But worry is not preparation. Worry is practicing suffering for an event that has not happened. It is paying interest on a debt you may never owe. It is a futile attempt to tame the wildness of the future with the leash of thought, and it succeeds only in exhausting us in the present. The path of wisdom does not ask us to become passive or irresponsible. It does not advocate for abandoning all forethought. Instead, it invites us to distinguish between anxious, future, obsessed planning, and wise, present moment action. The teaching of right effort encourages us to focus our energy where it can actually have an effect, right here, right now. We can think of ourselves as a gardener. A wise gardener knows they cannot control the weather. They cannot command the sun to shine or the rain to fall. They cannot control the blight that may be carried on the wind, or the exact number of fruits the harvest will yield. To obsess over these things would be a source of constant frustration. Instead, the wise gardener pours all their energy into the tasks of the present moment. They prepare the soil with care. They choose healthy seeds and plant them at the right depth. They water them diligently. They patiently remove the weeds. Their work is an act of faith and wisdom in the present. They do their best today, and then they release the outcome to the larger forces of nature. Our lives are this garden. Our actions, thoughts, and intentions in the present are the seeds we plant. We can choose to plant seeds of health, kindness, and awareness today, not with a rigid expectation of a guaranteed outcome, but because it is the wise and compassionate way to live right now. Our peace comes from the quality of our gardening, not from a desperate attempt to control the weather. There is a timeless story, often told in Zen and Taoist traditions, that perfectly illustrates the folly of our attempts to judge and control the future. An old farmer lived in a small village with his son. His most prized possession was a beautiful horse. One day, the horse ran away. All the neighbors came to console him. "What terrible luck," they said. The farmer simply replied, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who can say?" A week later, the horse returned, leading a dozen wild horses back into the farmer's corral. The neighbors gathered again. "What wonderful luck," they exclaimed. The farmer shrugged and said, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who can say?" The next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and broke his leg. The neighbors came once more. "Oh, what dreadful luck," they lamented. The farmer just looked at them and said, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who can say?" A few weeks after that, the emperor's army marched through the village, conscripting every able-bodied young man for a war they were unlikely to survive. They took all the other young men, but when they saw the farmer's son with his broken leg, they left him behind. This story reveals the profound limitation of our perspective. We see only a tiny fragment of a vast, interconnected tapestry of cause and effect. What appears to be a catastrophe today may be the seed of a great blessing tomorrow. What looks like a stroke of good fortune may lead to unforeseen difficulties. When we truly absorb this, our frantic need to control the future, to secure only good luck and avoid all bad luck, is revealed as a deeply misguided and stressful endeavor. This leads us to a radical shift in our orientation toward life. We are taught to believe that peace of mind comes from certainty, from knowing what will happen. The path of wisdom suggests the opposite. True peace comes from becoming comfortable with uncertainty. The desire to know the future, to have it all mapped out, creates a constant, subtle tension in the body and mind. It is a resistance to the fundamental nature of life, which is open, fluid, and unpredictable. The practice, then, is to learn how to relax into this not knowing. It is to release the clenched fist of fear and to meet the unknown with an open hand of curiosity. Instead of asking, "What if the worst happens?" we can learn to ask, with a sense of wonder, "I don't know what will happen. Isn't that interesting?" This is not a state of naive optimism. It is a state of profound realism. It acknowledges that we do not have, and have never had, the degree of control we imagine. In letting go of the illusion of control, we find an unexpected freedom. We are no longer burdened with the impossible job of being the general manager of the universe. How do we practice this in the face of real-life challenges, like a worrying medical symptom or a financial uncertainty? We practice what is known as radical acceptance. Acceptance does not mean we have to like what is happening. It does not mean we become a passive doormat. It simply means we stop fighting with reality. When a difficult situation arises, the first step is to acknowledge the truth of it, without the mental overlays of, "This shouldn't be happening," or "This is a catastrophe." We can say to ourselves, "This is what is present right now. This is the reality of this moment." This simple, courageous yes to what is stops the internal war. It ends the second arrow of resistance. From this place of clear-eyed acceptance, we can then act with far greater wisdom and clarity. Having accepted the reality of the situation, we can then ask, given that this is what's happening, what is the wisest and most compassionate thing to do next? We respond to life as it is, not as we wish it were. This is the heart of living with grace and courage in an uncertain world. We have now traveled a great distance. We have learned to release the weight of the past, with its regrets and its longings. And we have learned to relax our anxious, controlling grip on the future, with its fears and its fantasies. The chains to what has been are loosened. The desperate grasp for what might be is softened. We have withdrawn our energy from these two imaginary realms and have arrived, perhaps more fully than ever before, right here in the spaciousness of the present moment. A natural question arises. If we are no longer dwelling in the dramas of the past or the anxieties of the future, where then do we find our meaning, our joy, our nourishment? The beautiful answer is that it has been here all along, patiently waiting for us to notice. It resides not in grand achievements or future triumphs, but in the quiet, often overlooked beauty of the simple things. This leads us to the next stage of our journey, the art of discovering the profound and readily available joy of the present moment. Having cleared the ground of our minds, letting go of the heavy burdens of the past and the anxious grip on the future, we arrive in the present moment. We have created a space, but what do we fill this space with? For much of our lives, our happiness was pursued through striving and acquisition. We found joy in achievement, in new experiences, in the thrill of the chase. As we age, the energy for this kind of relentless pursuit may wane. The world may seem to offer fewer grand adventures, and so we might find ourselves in this quiet, present space, feeling a sense of lack, of boredom, of emptiness. We are looking for the old sources of happiness, but the landscape has changed. The path of wisdom invites us to a profound shift in our search for joy. It asks us to stop looking out there for the next big thing and to start discovering the quiet, abundant, and deeply satisfying joy that is already here, waiting patiently in the simple fabric of our lives. One of the great, unacknowledged gifts of aging is that it often forces us to slow down. A body that moves with more deliberation, a decrease in the frantic energy of youth, a retirement from the demands of a career, these can all be perceived as losses. But seen through the lens of wisdom, this deceleration is a blessing. When we were younger, life was often a blur. We rushed from one task to the next, our minds already on the next appointment while we were in the middle of the current one. We ate our meals while checking our email. We talked to our loved ones while planning our weekend. We drove through beautiful scenery without ever truly seeing it. We lived in a state of perpetual motion, and in that motion, we missed most of our lives. The slowing down that comes with age is an invitation to finally stop missing our lives. It is a chance for the senses to awaken from their slumber. The world, which was once just a background for our striving, can now come into the foreground in all its vivid detail. This is not a consolation prize for getting older. It is the entry ticket to a deeper and more authentic way of being. The practice is simply to begin to notice, to savor the ordinary moments we have always taken for granted. Consider your first cup of tea or coffee in the morning. For years, it may have just been a tool, a dose of caffeine to get the engine started. But now, you can treat it as a ceremony of joy. You can feel the warmth of the mug in your hands, a small, kind heat against your palms. You can watch the steam rising in delicate, dancing patterns. Before you even taste it, you can inhale its rich aroma. And when you take the first sip, you can close your eyes and let your full attention be on that single sensation, the warmth, the flavor, the feeling of it moving down into your body. In these 30 seconds, you are not planning your day. You are not worrying about your health. You are not thinking about the past. You are simply and fully alive with a cup of tea. This is not a small thing. This is everything. The same can be done with a ray of sunlight. Find a patch of sun on the floor or on your chair. Place your hand in it. Feel its gentle, life-giving warmth. Notice the way it illuminates the texture of the carpet or the grain of the wood. See the tiny dust motes, which are normally invisible, dancing in its light like a miniature galaxy. For a moment, you are connecting with the energy of a star 93 million miles away. It is a daily miracle we almost always ignore. This practice of deep, appreciative attention naturally gives rise to mudita, which is often translated as sympathetic or appreciative joy. It is the practice of finding joy in the happiness and good fortune of others. This is a powerful antidote to the poisons of envy, jealousy, and the painful feeling of being left behind. As we grow older, it can be easy to look at the vibrant energy of the young, their boundless opportunities, their physical prowess, and feel a pang of sadness for what we have lost. We may feel that their joy somehow highlights our own decline. Mudita practice is the conscious choice to reverse this habit. It is based on the profound understanding that joy is not a limited resource. The happiness of another person does not subtract from our own potential for happiness. In fact, learning to share in their joy multiplies our own opportunities for it infinitely. When you are sitting in a park, instead of dwelling on your own aches and pains, you can watch the children laughing as they run across the grass. Instead of thinking, "I wish I had that energy," you can consciously soften your heart and think, "How wonderful. Look at that pure, uninhibited joy. May it continue. May they be happy." When you see a young couple deeply in love, you can rejoice in their connection. When you hear of a friend's success, you can allow their good fortune to bring a smile to your own face. This practice is a balm for the heart. It dissolves the illusion of separation and connects us to the shared human experience of happiness. The master key that unlocks the door to all these forms of joy is the simple, powerful quality of gratitude. Gratitude and unhappiness cannot coexist in the mind at the same time. Gratitude is the ultimate shifter of perspective. It pulls our attention away from what we perceive to be lacking in our lives and focuses it squarely on the abundance that is already present. Our minds are conditioned to scan for problems, threats, and deficiencies. This is a survival mechanism left over from our evolutionary past. But in our modern world, this scarcity mindset often creates more suffering than it prevents. Gratitude is the intentional retraining of the mind to scan for blessings. The practice is not to wait for grand, momentous things to be grateful for. The practice is to find gratitude in the utterly ordinary. Can you feel gratitude for the simple fact that your heart is beating, a silent, faithful drum that has been playing for you every second of every day of your life? Can you feel gratitude for the chair that is supporting you, for the roof over your head, for the clean water that flows from your tap? Can you feel gratitude for this very breath, this free and constant gift of life? A simple yet transformative way to cultivate this is to keep a gratitude journal. Each night, before you go to sleep, take a few moments to write down 3 to 5 things from your day for which you are grateful. They do not need to be profound. The taste of the apple at lunch, the kindness of the cashier at the store, the way the light looked as the sun was setting, a comfortable pair of shoes. This simple act does more than just make you feel good for a few minutes. It begins to rewire your brain. You will find that during the day, your mind will start actively looking for things to put in your journal that night. You will begin to notice small moments of beauty and grace that you previously would have overlooked. You are changing your default setting from problem finding to blessing finding. This is one of the most direct routes to a lasting sense of well-being. There is a story of a student who asked a great Zen master, renowned for his serene old age, what his secret was. "How have you found such peace and contentment in your life?" the student asked. The master smiled and replied, "It is really quite simple. When I am hungry, I eat. When I am tired, I sleep." The student was confused. "But master," he said, Doesn't everyone do that? No, the master replied. When most people eat, their minds are not there. They are thinking of 100 other things, worrying about their business, rehashing an argument, planning their evening. When they lie down to sleep, they do not sleep. Their minds are wrestling with the problems of 1,000 yesterdays and 1,000 tomorrows. But when I eat, I just eat. Every bite is savored. When I sleep, I just sleep. I let go of everything. In this, there is great peace. This simple story contains the entire teaching. The joy is not in doing extraordinary things. The joy is in doing ordinary things with extraordinary attention. As we learn to slow down, to savor the simple gifts of our senses, to rejoice in the happiness of others, and to live with a grateful heart, we discover that we do not need to chase after happiness anymore. It begins to arise naturally from within. This new way of paying attention does more than just bring us joy. As we look more closely at our cup of tea, at the sunlight, at the smile on another's face, we begin to perceive a deeper truth. We see that the tea contains the cloud that brought the rain, the sun that gave it life, and the hands of the farmer who picked the leaves. We see that our own happiness is not separate from the happiness of others. We begin to intuit that nothing in this universe exists in isolation. Everything is profoundly connected to everything else. This dawning insight into the web of life leads us to our next exploration, the beautiful and liberating teaching of interbeing. As we learn to slow down and find joy in the simple, present moment, something remarkable begins to happen. Our attention, once narrow and self-focused, begins to expand. As we look deeply into a simple cup of tea, we see more than just tea. We see the rain, the soil, the sun, the farmer, the truck driver, the shopkeeper. We begin to intuit that this simple cup contains the entire universe. This dawning perception of interconnectedness is the gateway to our next great exploration, and it is the ultimate antidote to one of the most pervasive fears of aging, the fear of loneliness. We fear being left alone, of becoming isolated and cut off from the stream of life. But this fear, like so many others, is born from a fundamental illusion, the illusion that we are, or ever could be, separate in the first place. The teaching that illuminates this truth is known by the beautiful name coined by Thich Nhat Hanh, interbeing. To understand interbeing, let us begin with his simple yet profound contemplation of a single sheet of paper. If you were holding a blank sheet of paper in your hand, I would ask you to look at it and see the cloud. This might sound strange, but if you look deeply, you will see it. Without a cloud, there can be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. So the cloud is an essential part of this sheet of paper. If you take the cloud out of the paper can no longer exist. Now, look again and see the sunshine. The sun's light is crucial for the tree to grow through photosynthesis. So, the sunshine is also in the paper. If you take the sunshine out, the paper vanishes. Now look further. See the logger who cut down the tree, and see their parents who gave them life, and see the wheat in the field that became the bread they ate for breakfast, giving them the energy to work. All of this is also inside the sheet of paper. And what of the earth itself, the minerals in the soil that nourished the tree's roots? The earth is here. The entire cosmos, in its vast and intricate dance, has conspired to bring this simple sheet of paper into being. The teaching is this: the paper is made entirely of non-paper elements. It has no separate, independent self. It can only be with everything else. Now, let us turn this contemplative gaze upon ourselves. What you call me, this body, this mind, is no different from the sheet of paper. You are not a separate, self-contained entity. You are a focal point where the entire universe converges. Feel, for a moment, your own body. Within every cell is the legacy of your ancestors. Your mother and father are not just in your memory, they are physically present in the DNA that codes for the color of your eyes, the shape of your hands, the very beat of your heart, and their parents, and their parents' parents, stretching back through an unbroken chain of life for millennia. They are all here, within you. You are the current, living expression of a vast ancestral river. You are not an isolated island. You are a wave on the ocean of your lineage. Look at the food you ate for lunch. The vegetables grew in the earth, drawing minerals and water into themselves. The grains were nourished by the sun. This food has now become your cells, your energy, your very thoughts. The earth and the sun are not just out there. They are literally inside you, constituting your physical form. Consider the air you are breathing right now. With every inhalation, you are taking in the oxygen gifted to you by the trees and the plankton of the sea. You are in a constant, intimate exchange with the entire planet's atmosphere. The air that was in a tree in the Amazon rainforest yesterday may be in your lungs today. The boundary between you and the world is a complete illusion. You do not live on the earth. You are the earth, expressing itself for a time in human form. You are a walking, talking, breathing manifestation of the cosmos. There is a beautiful metaphor used to describe this reality. Imagine a single wave on the surface of the vast ocean from its own limited perspective. As it rises and crests, it has a clear beginning and a life of its own. It might look at the other waves and feel separate from them, and as it rushes toward the shore, it might be filled with a terrible fear, the fear of its own death, the fear of crashing and disappearing into nothingness. This is the perspective of the wave self. But if that wave could only pause and look deeply into its own nature, it would realize a profound truth. It would see that its fundamental essence is not wave. Its true nature is water. And as water, it cannot be born and it cannot die. It can only change its form. The crashing on the shore is not an annihilation. It is simply a transformation, a return to the great ocean from which it was never, for a single moment, truly separate. We are all like that wave. We identify with our small, temporary, individual form, and we live in fear of its dissolution. The wisdom of interbeing is the wave's realization that its true nature is water. It is the understanding that our true identity is not this small, separate self, but the entire, unborn, undying ocean of life itself. When this insight truly lands in your heart, it completely dissolves the foundation of loneliness. Loneliness is the painful experience of feeling separate, cut off, and disconnected. But if you interact with your ancestors, with the sun, with the earth, with every living being, how can you ever be truly separate? The feeling of isolation is a case of mistaken identity. It comes from believing you are only the wave and forgetting that you are the ocean. This understanding allows us to differentiate between the state of being alone and the feeling of being lonely. Solitude, the state of being physically alone, can be transformed from a source of fear into a source of profound richness and nourishment. When you sit alone in a quiet room, you are not cut off. You are in deep communion with the breath, with the memories of your loved ones, with the presence of the whole world that constitutes your body and mind. You can feel the presence of the entire universe in the quiet of your own heart. In this state, you can be alone, but never, ever lonely. We can bring this insight into our daily lives through simple acts of remembrance. When you eat, take a moment to reflect on the web of life in your food, offering a silent thanks to the sun, the earth, the rain, and all the beings who brought it to you. When you breathe, feel your intimate connection with the green plants of the world, participating in a silent, life-giving dialogue. When you look at another person, see beyond their personality and their opinions. See them as another manifestation of the same great mystery, another wave on the same ocean. See their own ancestors and conditions within them. This perspective is the very root of empathy and compassion, for you realize that their suffering and their happiness are not separate from your own. To see ourselves as part of this vast, intricate, and beautiful web of interbeing does more than just comfort us. It gives our lives a new and profound meaning. We are not isolated individuals trying to survive and then disappear. We are participants in a grand, unfolding story. We are a living bridge, a continuation of all that has come before us, and a vital seed for all that will come after us. This understanding of our place in the great chain of life transforms our perception of aging. It is no longer simply a personal process of decline. It becomes a sacred role, a ripening. We shift from being just an individual to being an elder, and the role of the elder is to distill a lifetime of experience, of joy and sorrow, of success and failure, into the precious nectar of wisdom, and to offer it as a gift to the world. This leads us to our next great discovery, the journey of transforming raw experience into liberating wisdom. Having realized our profound connection to all of life, our sense of being an isolated self begins to dissolve. We see that we are not a lonely island, but a vital part of a vast and interconnected continent of existence, a living continuation of all that has come before. This understanding does more than just soothe our fear of loneliness. It imbues our life's journey with a new and sacred meaning. The long road we have traveled, with all of its unexpected turns, its painful falls, and its moments of breathtaking joy, ceases to be just a personal story. It becomes the raw material for the creation of something incredibly precious, something that is the crowning achievement of a life lived with awareness. This precious substance is called prajna, a Sanskrit word often translated as wisdom. It is essential at the outset to distinguish this profound wisdom, this prajna, from mere knowledge or intelligence. Knowledge is the accumulation of information. It is horizontal. It is stored in books and databases. A young person can be a genius, possessing vast amounts of knowledge. They can solve complex equations, write brilliant code, or recite historical facts with perfect accuracy. This is a valuable and impressive human faculty. But wisdom is something else entirely. Wisdom is vertical. It is a deep, embodied understanding of the very nature of life. It is the kind of knowing that comes not from reading about a fire, but from having been touched by its flames. It is the intimate, cellular understanding of impermanence, gained not from a lecture, but from having loved and lost. It is the deep compassion that is born not from a moral precept, but from having failed and been forgiven. Knowledge knows what. Wisdom understands why. Knowledge can be acquired quickly. Wisdom ripens slowly, over a lifetime, like a fruit that needs the full cycle of the seasons. The sun and the rain, the warmth and the frosto reach its perfect sweetness. The years of our life provide the raw material for this ripening. Every experience, pleasant or painful, is a lesson. The process of aging, when combined with the practice of mindfulness and reflection, becomes a kind of sacred alchemy. Alchemy was the ancient art of turning base metals, like lead, into pure gold. In the alchemy of a conscious life, our experiences are the lead. Our joys teach us gratitude. Our successes teach us humility, for we see how many conditions had to come together for them to happen. And most powerfully, our pains, our failures, and our heartbreaks become our greatest teachers. When we meet our suffering with awareness and compassion, instead of with bitterness or denial, it transforms. The lead of our pain becomes the gold of wisdom. The scars from our old wounds once they have been healed by the light of our own attention, become maps. They show us the treacherous territories to avoid, and they give us a unique capacity to guide others who are lost in a similar landscape. Our personal history is no longer a source of pride or shame. It becomes a wellspring of universal insight. Old age, in this light, is the season of harvest. It is the time for this great alchemical work, the time to sit back and distill the essential nectar from the countless flowers of a lifetime's experience. This transforms our understanding of the role of an elder in our world. In many modern, youth-obsessed cultures, the elderly are often pushed to the margins. They are seen as unproductive, as a burden, as irrelevant relics of a bygone era. We warehouse their bodies and we disregard their voices. But a society that discards its elders is like a person who cuts off their own memory. It becomes shallow, unrooted, and destined to repeat the same mistakes over and over. In many traditional cultures, the opposite is true. The elders are revered. They are seen as the living libraries of the community, the keepers of the stories, the anchors of stability. They are the ones who have seen it all, the cycles of birth and death, of war and peace, of prosperity and famine. They have a long view. They have perspective that cannot be downloaded from the internet. They are not a burden to be managed. They are a living treasure to be cherished. Imagine a great, ancient tree standing on a windswept hill. It is not as straight or as smooth as the young saplings in the valley below. Its trunk is thick and gnarled. Its bark is deeply furrowed and scarred, bearing the marks of 100 storms, of lightning strikes, of long droughts and bitter winters. Some of its branches are twisted, some are broken, and yet there is a profound beauty and majesty in this old tree. Its very imperfections tell the story of its resilience, of its endurance, and because of its age, because of the very hardships it has weathered, its roots run deep into the earth, and its vast canopy provides a life-giving shelter. Countless birds build their nests in its branches. Squirrels and other creatures find a home in its hollows. Travelers rest in its cool shade. This ancient tree is the perfect metaphor for the wise elder. Their wrinkles are the furrows in the bark. Their life's sorrows are the scars. And their accumulated wisdom is the deep, quiet shelter they provide for the world around them, a place of peace and stability in the midst of life's storms. This true wisdom, this prajna, is always clothed in humility. It has nothing to prove. The person who is truly wise does not go around offering unsolicited advice or boasting of their insights. In fact, wisdom often expresses itself as a deep comfort with uncertainty, with the great mystery of it all. It has less to do with having all the answers, and more to do with asking the right questions. It is found not in loud pronouncements, but in quiet, spacious listening. The presence of a wise elder is often more healing than their words. They are like a lighthouse on a rocky coast. A lighthouse does not roar like a foghorn or chase after ships that are lost. It does not shout directions. It simply stands its ground, remains true to its nature, and shines its light, quietly and reliably. For those who are navigating the dark and stormy seas of life, that quiet, steady light is everything. It is a beacon of hope, a point of orientation. To share one's wisdom is not to preach. It is simply to shine one's light, humbly and with compassion, for the benefit of all. When we view aging through this lens, the entire narrative shifts. It is no longer a story of decline, of becoming obsolete and irrelevant. It becomes a story of ripening, of becoming essential. It is the culmination of a life, the final, beautiful unfolding of our human potential. We are not fading away. We are being distilled into our most precious essence, this deep, embodied wisdom, forged in the crucible of a long life, gives us a unique strength and perspective. It equips us with the courage and the clarity to face the final, great truth of our impermanence. It allows us to approach the one subject our culture fears above all others, the subject of our own death, not with panicked terror, but with a sense of calm curiosity, of acceptance, and perhaps even of grace. For the one who has truly lived and who has harvested the wisdom of that life sees that death is not an enemy to be fought, but a final, natural mystery to be entered. The wisdom that ripens in a long life, that deep, embodied understanding of the way things are, gives us the stability and courage to look directly at the one great fear that underlies all others, the fear of our own death. In our modern culture, death is often treated as a failure. It is a medical defeat, a subject to be avoided in conversation, a reality to be sanitized and hidden away behind closed doors. We fight it with all our might, and we view its inevitable arrival as the ultimate tragedy. This constant resistance, this lifelong act of looking away, does not protect us from death. It only amplifies our fear of it, allowing that fear to cast a long, dark shadow over the entirety of our lives. The path of wisdom invites us to do something radical. It invites us to turn around, to stop running, and to look gently, with curiosity and courage, at the reality of our own mortality. For in facing death, we paradoxically discover the secret to living a life of profound meaning, joy, and peace. This practice of consciously contemplating the reality of death is known in the Buddhist tradition as Maranasati. This does not mean dwelling in a state of morbid, depressing obsession. It is not about creating fear. It is about using the awareness of death to dissolve fear and to awaken our hearts. It is a practice of remembrance. We can practice by gently reminding ourselves, my body is of the nature to die. Death is certain, its time is uncertain. We can practice when we hear of another's passing, not with a sense of morbid relief that it wasn't us, but with a compassionate recognition of our shared condition. As it is for them, so one day it will be for me. The purpose of this remembrance is to cut through the noise of our trivial, everyday concerns, the anxieties we have about our reputation, the small resentments we hold, the endless pursuit of trivial pleasures. All of these things are revealed in their true proportion when held up against the vast backdrop of our mortality. The awareness of death is a great clarifier. It sweeps away the non-essential and focuses our attention with laser-like precision on what truly matters, the quality of our love, the depth of our kindness, and the peace in our own hearts. A great deal of our fear comes from seeing death as an unnatural interruption, a violent end to the project of life. But if we look to nature, we see that death is not an end, but an essential part of a beginning. A seed must completely fall apart. It must die as a seed for the new plant to sprout. A caterpillar must dissolve in its chrysalis. It must die as a caterpillar for the butterfly to emerge. The beautiful colors of autumn are the sign of the leaves dying, a process that is necessary for the tree to conserve its energy and survive the winter, ready for new birth in the spring. Life and death are not opposites. They are two faces of a single, unified process. They are a dance. You cannot have one without the other. To be born is to receive a ticket for the return journey. To see this is to understand that death is not a failure of life. It is a fulfillment of a natural law. It is not an enemy to be fought, but a rhythm to be trusted. Furthermore, our fear is rooted in the idea of complete annihilation, of a solid me being utterly erased. But as we have explored, there is no solid, unchanging me to be found in the first place. What we are is a process, a flow of energy and consciousness. And one of the fundamental laws of the universe is that energy is never created or destroyed. It only changes form. The wood in a fire dies as wood, but it is transformed into heat, light, ash, and smoke, all of which continue and become part of new processes. So it is with us. The atoms that make up our body have existed since the beginning of time, forged in distant stars. After our body ceases to function, these atoms will not vanish. They will disperse and continue, becoming part of the soil, a plant, an insect, the air, our actions, our words, our love. The very energy of our presence in the world, these things also continue. They ripple outwards, touching the lives of others in ways we can never fully know, creating causes and conditions that will shape the future long after our name is forgotten. Death is not an endpoint. It is a profound transformation. It is the wave, which for a time identified with its individual form, finally returning to the vast, eternal ocean of being, which was its true home all along. There is a deeply moving story from the life of the Buddha that speaks directly to this truth. A young woman named Kisa Gotami had a baby son whom she loved more than anything in the world. One day, the child fell sick and died. Driven mad with a grief she could not bear, Kisa Gotami refused to accept his death. She picked up his small body and went from house to house, desperately begging everyone she met for medicine that could bring him back. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man saw her desperate state and, with great compassion, told her, "I cannot give you medicine, but I know someone who can. Go to the Buddha." She ran to the Buddha and laid her son's body at his feet, pleading for him to perform a miracle. The Buddha looked at her with infinite kindness and said, "I can help you, but first you must do one thing for me. You must go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no one and no parent, no child, no spouse, no servant thus ever died." Filled with a surge of hope, Kisa Gotami rushed back to the village. She went to the first house and asked, "Can you spare me a mustard seed? The Buddha needs it to make medicine for my son." "Of course," the woman of the house said, "we have plenty." But as she was about to take the seed, Kisa Gotami remembered the Buddha's condition. "Has anyone in this house ever died?" she asked. The woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said, "do not remind me of my deepest sorrow. My beloved husband died just last year." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. At every door, the story was the same. People were eager to help, but every single family had been touched by death. One had lost a parent, another a child, another a sibling. She began to hear the refrain, "The living are few, but the dead are many." As she walked from door to door, a profound transformation began to take place within her. Her frantic, personal, isolating grief began to soften and expand into a vast, universal, and compassionate understanding. She realized that death was not a unique curse that had been visited upon her alone. It was the shared, inescapable condition of all living things. With this new wisdom dawning in her heart, she took the body of her son to the charnel ground and returned to the Buddha, no longer asking for medicine, but for a place on the path of understanding. The lesson of Kisa Gotami is the lesson for us all. Our terror of death comes from seeing it as a personal affront. Wisdom and peace arise when we see it as a universal truth. This acceptance does not lead to despair. It leads to a radical re-evaluation of how we live. To remember that our time is finite is the most powerful motivation to live fully, lovingly, and authentically in the time that we have. The call to live each day as if it were your last is not an invitation to recklessness. It is an invitation to presence. It means you do not put off expressing your love. You do not carry a grudge until tomorrow, for tomorrow may not come. You mend the relationships that matter today. It means you truly taste your food, You truly see the sunset. You truly hear the music, because you know this precious sensory world will not be available to you forever. The awareness of death is a great fire that burns away the insignificant, the small anxieties, the petty grievances, the ego-driven ambitions. They all turn to ash in the face of this ultimate truth, leaving only what is essential: love, kindness, and a profound appreciation for the fragile beauty of this moment. And so, by looking directly into the face of our own ending, we paradoxically find the secret to a new beginning. We learn to live with a depth and a gratitude that was previously unimaginable. The fear of death, when met with wisdom, is transformed into a love of life. But this raises a natural and important question. If our time here is indeed so short, and our individual form is destined to dissolve back into the great ocean, what then remains? What is the true mark we leave upon the world? This is the question of our true legacy. A legacy not measured in wealth or monuments, but in the quality of the presence we have offered and the love we have shared. Having looked with courage and clarity at the truth of our own mortality, the question of what we will leave behind arises with a new sense of urgency. Our culture offers a very clear, if ultimately unsatisfying, answer to this question. A legacy, we are taught, is measured in tangible things. It is the wealth we accumulate, the property we pass on, the professional accomplishments that will be etched on a plaque, the famous name that might echo for a generation or two. We are encouraged to build a legacy of stone and stock portfolios, a monument to the self that proves we were here, that we mattered, and so we can spend a great deal of our lives striving for this, driven by a deep-seated fear of being forgotten, of disappearing without a trace. But the path of wisdom invites us to question this entire paradigm. It asks us to consider that a true legacy is not something you leave behind at all. It is something you give moment by moment while you are still alive. It is a legacy not of what you had, but of who you were. The conventional pursuit of legacy is fraught with anxiety. It is rooted in the ego's desperate desire for permanence, the very illusion of a solid self that we have already seen through. This striving keeps us oriented toward the future, constantly measuring our progress, and often sacrificing our present moment peace and our most important relationships for the sake of a future monument. We may work so hard to build an inheritance that we have no time or energy to simply be present with the very people we plan to leave it to. And ultimately, a legacy built on external things is built on sand. Fortunes can be squandered in a single generation. Reputations, once so carefully curated, can be forgotten in the relentless march of time. Buildings crumble, companies fail, and names fade from memory. To stake our life's meaning on these impermanent things is to set ourselves up for a deep and inevitable disappointment. The path of wisdom offers a different vision of what it means to leave a mark on the world. It suggests that our true legacy lies not in what we build, but in what we plant. We leave our legacy in the form of tiny, living seeds that we sow in the hearts and minds of others through our everyday interactions. Think of a time when you were struggling and someone offered you a single, sincere word of encouragement. That word may have been a seed of hope that helped you to keep going. Think of a time you were in pain and someone simply sat with you, listening with their full, compassionate attention, not trying to fix you, but just being present with you. That presence was a seed of connection, a message that you were not alone in your suffering. Think of a time you were with a child and you put down your phone, got on the floor, and gave them your complete, undivided attention for just 10 minutes. That gift of your presence was a seed of self-worth, a message to the child that they were valuable and important. These acts of kindness, of deep listening, of shared presence are our real legacy. Unlike money or monuments, these seeds are alive. They take root, they grow, and they produce their own seeds, spreading in ways we can never trace. The person you were kind to goes on to be kind to another. The child who felt seen and valued grows up and helps others to feel seen and valued. This is our true continuation. This is how we achieve a meaningful immortality. Perhaps the most profound and powerful legacy we can offer, especially to our own families, is the gift of our own inner peace. We often think that the best thing we can do for our children is to provide for them financially. But children, even adult children, are exquisitely sensitive to the inner state of their parents. Anxiety is contagious. If we spend our later years consumed by fear, bitterness, regret, and anger, we transmit that atmosphere of suffering to everyone around us. Our unresolved pain becomes their burden. They inherit our inner turmoil. But peace, too, is contagious. If we have done the courageous inner work to meet our own aging with acceptance, to soften our hearts with compassion, and to find joy in the present moment, then our very being becomes a sanctuary for others. When people are around us, they feel a sense of calm. Our peace gives them permission to feel peaceful too. Our acceptance of our own life, with all its imperfections, helps them to accept their own. To leave your loved ones with the memory of your peaceful, loving, and graceful presence is the most valuable inheritance imaginable. It is a gift of inner wealth that can never be spent, stolen, or lost. It will continue to nourish them for the rest of their lives. There is a beautiful story of a very old man who was out in his garden, slowly and carefully planting a small sapling. A younger, more pragmatic neighbor came by and scoffed. "Why are you planting that tree?" he asked. "You are old, and this is a tree that takes many years to grow. You will surely never live long enough to sit in its shade or to eat its fruit." The old man paused his work, looked up, and smiled gently. "I know," he said, "but when I was a boy, I sat in the shade of trees that I did not plant, and I ate the fruit from orchards planted by hands I never knew. I am planting this tree not for myself, but for the children of my children, and for all those who will come after me. My joy is not in the future harvest. My joy is here, now, in the simple act of planting. This is the heart of a true legacy. It is an act of selfless generosity, performed with a love for a future you will not participate in. And the reward is not a future prize for the ego, but a present moment joy in the act of giving itself. This understanding completely reframes our life. A legacy is not a final project we begin when we receive a serious diagnosis or retire from our work. Our legacy is not something we build at the end. It is something we are creating in this very moment and in every moment of our lives. The sum total of our moments is our legacy. Every time we choose to respond with patience instead of anger, every time we choose to listen instead of interrupting, every time we choose compassion over judgment, we are polishing our true legacy. Every small act of kindness, every quiet moment of presence, every heartfelt expression of gratitude, these are the brushstrokes with which we are painting our life's masterpiece. There is no separation between living our life and creating our legacy. They are one and the same. When we fully absorb this truth, that our presence is our legacy, a final layer of striving can fall away. We are no longer trying to achieve a certain outcome or to secure a particular reputation. We are simply endeavoring to inhabit each moment with as much awareness and kindness as we can muster. Our sense of self-worth no longer depends on external validation. It arises from the inner knowing that we are living in alignment with our deepest values. This frees us to experience a new and profound kind of happiness, a state of being that is not tossed about by the changing winds of fortune. It is a stable, balanced, and imperturbable peace that is not dependent on whether we are experiencing pleasure or pain, gain or loss, praise or blame. This unshakable state of heart is the next great landscape on our journey. It is the profound inner stillness known as upekkha, or equanimity, when we begin to understand our legacy not as a monument we build for the future, but as the quality of presence we offer in each moment. A great deal of our life striving begins to fall away. The anxious need to achieve, to acquire, to prove our worth can finally relax. This releases us into a new relationship with happiness itself. For most of our lives, we experience happiness as a conditional and fragile state. It is dependent on getting what we want and avoiding what we don't want. We feel happy when we receive praise, when we experience pleasure, when our bodies are healthy, when we are gaining in wealth or status. We feel unhappy when we are met with blame, when we experience pain, when our bodies are sick, when we suffer loss. Our inner well-being is like a small boat tossed about on the waves of circumstance, constantly at the mercy of the next unpredictable swell. But the path of wisdom points to a different kind of happiness altogether. It is a deep, abiding peace that does not depend on whether the waters are calm or stormy. It is an unconditional well-being. In the Buddhist tradition, this unshakable state of heart is known as upekkha, or equanimity. It is vital to understand what equanimity is not, for it is often mistaken for qualities that are cold and lifeless. Equanimity is not indifference. Indifference is a numb, withdrawn state of not caring. It is a turning away from life, a form of aversion. Equanimity, by contrast, turns towards life, embracing it fully. Equanimity is also not apathy or passivity. It does not mean we stop feeling, or that we no longer act to prevent harm or create good in the world. And it is certainly not emotional suppression, where we grit our teeth and pretend not to feel pain or deny our joy. It is the very opposite. It is the capacity to feel everything, to be open to the full spectrum of human experience, but to do so from a place of such deep balance and stability that we are not thrown off center. So what is this balanced, spacious state of heart? Upekkha is born of wisdom. It is the natural calm that arises when we have truly, deeply absorbed the truths of impermanence and interconnectedness. Because we know that all experiences are fleeting, we do not desperately cling to the pleasant ones or violently push away the unpleasant ones. We can meet them both with a balanced and open heart, knowing this too shall pass. Because we understand that all things are interconnected, we see the bigger picture and are not so easily caught up in our own narrow, personal dramas. Equanimity is a state of immense spaciousness. Imagine your mind is a vast, open sky. Feelings, thoughts, and life events are like the weather sometimes. There are bright, sunny days. Sometimes there are dark, raging storms. Equanimity is learning to rest as the sky, which is never harmed or diminished by the weather that passes through it. The sky allows the storm, it allows the sun, it has room for it all. And most profoundly, equanimity is a form of vast, inclusive love. It is a deep and caring presence that does not play favorites. It sees the beauty in the sunlight and the life-giving necessity of the rain. It can hold joy and sorrow, success and failure, life and death, with the same steady, compassionate embrace, seeing it all as part of the sacred, unfolding mystery of life. There are two powerful metaphors that help us to feel the quality of equanimity. The first is that of a great mountain. Imagine a majestic mountain, its peak reaching into the clouds. Storms form around it. Winds howl, lightning flashes, and rain lashes down upon its slopes. In other seasons, it is bathed in intense heat and brilliant sunshine. The mountain is intimately touched by all of this changing weather. It feels the wind and the rain and the sun, but the mountain is not shaken by it. It does not become the storm. It does not try to cling to the sunny day. It remains utterly itself-solid, grounded, stable, and present, while the weather of the world swirls around it. To cultivate equanimity is to cultivate this mountain-like quality of mind, to find that place of unshakable stability within ourselves. The second metaphor is that of the ocean. The surface of the ocean is a place of ceaseless activity. There are gentle ripples, great swelling waves, turbulent whitecaps, and sometimes the fury of a hurricane. This is a perfect image of our day-to-day mental and emotional life, a constant flux of thoughts, feelings, and reaction. But no matter how chaotic the surface of the ocean becomes, if you could sink down into its great depths, you would find a place of profound and absolute stillness. Down deep, the water is silent, dark, and perfectly calm. The storms on the surface cannot touch it. Equanimity is the art of learning to access these silent depths of our own being. It is the discovery of a sanctuary of peace that is always available, a stillness that persists even while the surface of our life is in motion. This profound state of peace might seem like a lofty goal, but the process of aging itself creates uniquely fertile ground for its cultivation. Youth is often a time of fiery passions, of intense ambitions, of dramatic highs and devastating lows. Our identity is so caught up in the worldly winds of gain and loss, praise and blame. But as we grow older, the heat of these passions can naturally begin to cool. The desperate need to prove ourselves, to achieve the next thing, to win the next prize, can relax its grip. Having lived through many decades, we have seen it all before. We have experienced great joys, and we have seen them fade. We have suffered terrible losses, and we have seen that we were able to survive them. This long perspective provides a kind of natural wisdom. We learn from direct experience that all things are transient. This lived understanding is the very foundation of equanimity. As our attachment to our worldly roles and our future ambitions softens, there is simply less to defend, less to be anxious about, and our minds can naturally settle into a more balanced and spacious state. We can actively cultivate this quality through our practice. The foundation, as always, is mindfulness. By observing our pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings arise and pass away without reacting, we are training ourselves not to be slaves to our preferences. We can also reflect on what the Buddha called the 8 worldly winds, the 8 forces that are constantly blowing our minds around: pleasure and its opposite, pain; gain and its opposite, loss; praise and its opposite, blame; and fame and its opposite, disrepute. The practice is to see how we are affected by these pairs. When praised, does the mind puff up with pride? When blamed, does it collapse in shame? By observing this, we learn not to be so easily blown over. We can also use a simple contemplation. When a pleasant experience arises, we can acknowledge it with joy, and then gently whisper to ourselves, "This is impermanent. I will enjoy it without clinging." When an unpleasant experience arises, we can meet it with compassion and whisper, "This too is impermanent. This is of the nature to change." This practice continually reinforces the wisdom that loosens the bonds of attachment and aversion, allowing the heart to find its natural, balanced center. Equanimity, then, is not a dull or disengaged state. It is a radiant, quiet, and deeply resilient peace. It is the fruit of a life of inner work. It is the ultimate happiness, because it is not dependent on anything outside of ourselves. It is a portable sanctuary, a peace that we can carry with us through all of life's changing seasons. And this profound inner balance is not just a pleasant state to enjoy, it is an essential resource, It is the steady, solid ground from which we can meet the most concrete and difficult challenges of our later years. Having cultivated this inner mountain of stability, we are now prepared to look at the inevitable realities of physical change and illness, not with fear, anger, or despair, but with the clear-eyed, courageous, and compassionate wisdom that is the hallmark of an equanimous heart. We are ready to see the body, even in its frailty, not as an enemy, but as a wise and profound teacher. With the steady ground of equanimity beneath our feet, we have found a place of profound inner balance. We have discovered a peace that is not dependent on life always being pleasant or easy. This unshakable peace is not a shield that makes us immune to difficulty. Rather, it is the resource that allows us to meet difficulty with wisdom, grace, and an open heart. And for all of us, as we journey through life, one of the most direct and undeniable difficulties we must face is the changing nature of our physical bodies. As we age, we are more likely to encounter pain, illness, and a sense of frailty. Our culture teaches us to view these experiences as an enemy. We see pain as a foe to be vanquished, illness as a failure of the body, and the entire process of physical decline as a personal tragedy. This perspective automatically puts us in a state of war with our own bodies, a war that is exhausting and ultimately unwinnable. But the path of wisdom offers a radical and healing alternative. It invites us to consider that these challenging physical experiences, if met with awareness, can be among our most profound teachers. Our habitual reaction to physical pain is to resist it. The moment an unpleasant sensation arises, a wave of aversion immediately follows. The mind says, "I don't like this. Make it stop." We tense our muscles around the area of pain as if to wall it off. We distract ourselves. We numb ourselves. We do anything we can to avoid feeling the raw sensation. This resistance is the second arrow. The first arrow is the physical sensation itself, the throbbing in a joint, the ache in the back. This is unavoidable, but the second arrow is the mental suffering we add on top of it. The fear, the anger, the self-pity, the story that this is terrible, I can't stand it. Very often, this second arrow of mental resistance is far more painful than the first arrow of pure physical sensation. This tensing against the pain, this inner battle, not only exhausts us mentally, but can actually increase the physical suffering. It creates a feedback loop of tension and pain, making the experience far worse than it needs to be. The practice, then, is to learn how to stop firing that second arrow. It is the practice of turning towards our physical discomfort, not with aggression, but with a gentle, kind curiosity. This may sound counterintuitive. Why would we want to move closer to something that hurts? We do it because in moving closer, we can begin to change our relationship to it. Instead of treating the pain as a solid, monstrous enemy, we can begin to investigate it with the mindful attention we have been cultivating. You can try this with any minor discomfort you might be feeling right now. Bring your awareness to that area of your body. Instead of labeling it pain, just notice the raw sensory data. Is the sensation hot or cool or neutral? Is it sharp or dull or tingling? Is it a throbbing sensation or a feeling of pressure or a burning quality? Is it constant or does it change from moment to moment, rising and falling in intensity like a wave? As you do this, you deconstruct the solid seeming monster of pain into a flickering, changing flow of sensations. It becomes less personal, less threatening. We can also bring the breath and our compassion to the sensation. As you breathe in, you can imagine your breath traveling to that area of discomfort, bringing with it a sense of space and kindness. As you breathe out, you can imagine softening all the muscles around that area, releasing the tension, letting go of the resistance. The intention is not to force the pain to go away. The intention is to stop fighting with it. It is to learn how to be with the sensation in a more peaceful and spacious way. A remarkable thing can happen when we do this. Sometimes, when the mental and physical resistance is released, the perceived intensity of the sensation actually lessens. The second arrow was a major part of the pain, and we have now put it down. We are simply left with the first arrow, the raw sensation, which we can learn to hold in a cradle of compassionate awareness. When we are able to meet our physical suffering in this way, we can begin to hear the lessons it is teaching us. Pain and illness are powerful, if sometimes severe, teachers of impermanence. In our youth, it is easy to live under the illusion that we are invincible, that our bodies are reliable machines that will always function as we wish. A significant illness or chronic pain shatters this illusion completely. It is an undeniable reminder that this body is a fragile, conditioned phenomenon, subject to change and decay, and not ultimately under our control. This is not a depressing realization. It is a profoundly humbling and clarifying one. It wakes us up from our complacency. Illness is also a great teacher of gratitude. It is only when we lose our health that we truly appreciate what a precious gift it was. The simple ability to breathe without obstruction, to walk across a room without pain, to digest a meal with ease, to think a clear thought. These are extraordinary miracles that we completely take for granted until they are gone. Illness can return us to a state of profound appreciation for the simple, functioning grace of a healthy body. It teaches us not to waste a single moment of well-being. And furthermore, illness can be a gateway to a deeper humility and compassion. When we are sick and frail, our ego, with all its pride and accomplishments, is stripped away. We are brought back to our essential, vulnerable humanity. In this state, our hearts can soften. Our own suffering becomes a bridge of connection to all the other beings in the world who are also suffering. Our personal pain opens us up to a universal compassion, and we realize our interconnectedness in a way that might never have been possible when we were healthy and self-sufficient. The great 20th century Thai meditation master, Ajahn Chah, provided a powerful living example of this teaching. For the last 10 years of his life, he suffered from a progressively debilitating illness that left him paralyzed and eventually unable to speak. For a world-renowned teacher, this could have been seen as a great tragedy. Yet, he faced his decline with unwavering equanimity and grace. He used his own decaying body as his final, most profound teaching tool. His students would gather around him, and he would teach them through his silent, peaceful presence. He was showing them, in the most direct way possible, that the body can be sick, but the mind does not have to be sick. The body can be in pain, but the heart can be at peace. He demonstrated that our ultimate freedom is not freedom from physical discomfort, but freedom from our mental reaction to it. His illness was not the end of his teaching career. It was his most powerful sermon. This is the practice that is available to all of us. It is the practice of separating the reality of the body from the story of the mind. We can learn to acknowledge, there is a feeling of pain in my leg, without adding the second arrow thought, my life is ruined. We can observe, the body feels weak and tired today, without concluding, I am a worthless burden. This is the art of caring for the body with all possible medical and practical means, while simultaneously caring for the mind with the tools of wisdom and compassion. We learn to inhabit our changing bodies not as a prison of failing flesh, but as a sacred vessel, a precious and wise teacher that is guiding us toward our deepest liberation. The diligent, compassionate care we learn to give our physical bodies must also be extended to our minds. For the mind, too, has its own unique challenges and potentials as we age. It has its own patterns of wear and tear, and its own capacity for clarity and peace. Having learned how to listen to the wisdom of the ailing body, we now turn our attention inward to the specific ways we can cultivate a mental garden that, even in late autumn, can produce beautiful and lasting blossoms of joy, tranquility, and insight. Having learned to approach our physical bodies with the wisdom of a student and the kindness of a friend, we now turn that same compassionate attention inward to the mind itself. For many, the fear of mental decline in old age is even more profound than the fear of physical frailty. The thought of losing our memory, our clarity, our very sense of who we are, can be a source of deep and persistent anxiety. We envision the mind as a fragile object that is destined to break down, but the teachings of wisdom offer us a far more hopeful and empowering perspective. The mind is not a static object that simply decays. It is a living garden, and even in the late autumn of our lives, with wise and patient cultivation, this inner garden can remain a place of extraordinary beauty, peace, and clarity. To understand this, let us explore the metaphor of the mind garden more deeply. Like any garden, the mind has a tendency, if left untended, to be overrun by weeds. The weeds are the unwholesome mental states, the persistent worry, the looping resentments, the clinging fears, the habit of negative thinking. These weeds require no effort to grow. They are the default state of an untrained mind, thriving on neglect. The flowers, on the other hand, are the wholesome states of mind, loving, kindness, compassion, gratitude, joy, and the calm clarity of mindfulness. These beautiful blossoms do not grow by accident. They must be consciously planted, watered, and nurtured. Our task as we age is to become the wise and dedicated gardener of our own mind. It is to learn how to gently pull the weeds of negativity without churning up the soil in anger, and how to patiently cultivate the flowers of peace and kindness, knowing that this work is the most important work we can do. The first and most powerful tool for cultivating this garden is the practice of meditation itself. We can think of meditation as a kind of exercise for the brain. Just as physical exercise keeps the body strong and flexible, mental exercise keeps the mind sharp and resilient. Modern neuroscience is now confirming what contemplatives have known for centuries. The practice of mindfulness can profoundly change the structure and function of the brain for the better. The simple act of repeatedly bringing your attention back to the breath over and over again is like a workout for the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for focus, emotional regulation, and wise decision-making. By strengthening this muscle of attention, we improve our ability to stay centered amidst life's challenges and to resist being carried away by the weeds of anxious thought. Meditation is not a passive retreat from life. It is an active and powerful way to maintain our cognitive fitness and to nurture a mind that is both clear and calm. A wise gardener is also careful about what they allow into their garden. They protect it from pests and poisons. In the same way, we must practice good mental hygiene by being mindful of what we feed our minds through our senses. If you were to eat a diet of nothing but junk food, you would not be surprised to find your body feeling sluggish and unwell. Similarly, if we consume a constant diet of sensationalist news, violent entertainment, social media outrage, and cynical commentary, we cannot be surprised when our minds feel agitated, anxious, and fearful. Every image we see, every sound we hear, every article we read is a seed we are planting in our inner garden. The practice of mental hygiene means becoming a conscious consumer of information. It does not mean becoming uninformed or burying our heads in the sand. It means choosing to nourish the mind. It means making a conscious choice to listen to calming music, to read books that are deep and insightful, to watch programs that inspire kindness and wisdom, and to limit our exposure to the constant drumbeat of fear and anger that so often dominates our media landscape. It is about recognizing that a peaceful mind is a precious resource, and it is our responsibility to protect it. Furthermore, a healthy garden is a place of life and growth. The mind is the same. It thrives on engagement, on novelty, on the joy of learning. There is a pervasive myth in our culture that learning is only for the young. This is a deeply limiting and untrue belief. The practice of nurturing lifelong curiosity is one of the greatest gifts we can give our aging minds. To learn a new skill, whether it is a musical instrument, a new language, or how to paint with watercolors, forges new neural pathways in the brain, keeping it flexible and adaptive. To read a challenging book, to engage with ideas that stretch our understanding, keeps the mind supple. To have meaningful conversations, to move beyond gossip and complaint, and to talk about the things that truly matter: our feelings, our hopes, our understanding of life. This is a profound source of mental and spiritual vitality. This is not about staving off decline as a chore. It is about embracing the sheer joy of discovery, a joy that is available to us until our very last breath. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the wise gardener treats their garden with compassion. There will be seasons of incredible flourishing, and there will be seasons where things do not grow as planned. There will be weeds we cannot seem to get rid of. As we age, we may experience changes in our cognitive abilities. We might find it harder to recall a name. We might lose our keys more often. We might walk into a room and forget why we are there. Our cultural conditioning tells us to meet these moments with panic. The inner critic shrieks, "This is it. I'm losing my mind." This reaction, this second arrow of fear and self-judgment, is far more destructive than the moment of forgetfulness itself. The practice of wisdom is to meet these moments with the same self-compassion we have been cultivating all along. It is to meet a forgotten name, not with panic, but with a gentle patience. It is to learn to laugh at our own absent-mindedness, to see it not as a catastrophe, but as a gentle reminder of our own human imperfection. We can learn to befriend our changing mind, to treat it with the kindness we would offer a dear, old friend who is sometimes a little forgetful. This lightness of being, this compassionate acceptance, is the ultimate sign of a healthy and peaceful mind. By actively tending to our inner garden, by exercising the mind through meditation, by protecting it with good mental hygiene, by nourishing it with curiosity, and by holding it all with boundless compassion, we can ensure that our mind remains a beautiful and peaceful sanctuary throughout our entire lives. We have now explored how to care for our changing bodies and our changing minds with wisdom and kindness. This integrated sense of compassionate care brings us to a new understanding of what it means to be strong and what it means to be vulnerable. As we learn to accept our own needs and limitations, we open ourselves to a new and liberating way of relating to the world, a way that is not based on rugged individualism, but on the graceful and courageous dance of giving and receiving help. This leads us to the profound art of interdependence. Having learned to care for our bodies and minds with a new wisdom and tenderness, we arrive at an honest recognition of our own human vulnerability. We see that we cannot do everything alone, that our strength is finite, and that our needs change over time. For many of us, particularly in a culture that fiercely prizes self-reliance, this recognition can trigger a deep and primal fear, the fear of becoming a burden, the fear of losing our independence. We see dependence as the ultimate failure, a shameful state to be avoided at all costs. This belief causes immense suffering. It isolates us. It forces us to pretend we are stronger than we are, and it cuts us off from the very connection that could bring us comfort and joy. But the path of wisdom invites us to see this entire picture from a radically different perspective. It suggests that true freedom is found not in a fantasy of rugged individualism, but in the graceful and courageous embrace of our profound interdependence. The first step is to deconstruct the myth of independence itself. From our earliest years, we are told stories of the self-made person, the hero who pulls themselves up by their own bootstraps and succeeds against all odds without help from anyone. We have absorbed this ideal so deeply that we believe it to be a true and noble goal. But if we look with the clear eyes of interbeing, we see that a truly independent person has never existed. Even at the peak of our physical strength and professional success, when we felt most independent, we were utterly and completely dependent on a vast, invisible network of support. We were dependent on the farmers who grew our food, on the workers who built our homes and paved our roads, on the engineers who maintained the power grid. We were dependent on our friends and family for emotional support, on artists and musicians for inspiration, and on the entire planet for the air we breathed and the water we drank. Our independence was always a convenient illusion, a story we told ourselves by ignoring the billion threads of connection that were holding us up every single moment. To see this is not to diminish our accomplishments, but to place them in a truer, more humble, and more grateful context. So, if we have always been dependent, why is it so painful to admit we need help as we get older? The resistance comes from the ego, that part of our mind that is identified with being a separate, solid, and competent self. The ego wants to be seen as strong, capable, and in control. To say the words, "I need help," feels like a defeat. It feels like a public admission that the fortress of the self is not as impregnable as we wanted others to believe. We fear that needing help will diminish us in the eyes of others, and in our own eyes. But the path of wisdom reframes this completely. The act of asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of profound spiritual strength. It is a practice of humility, a willingness to let go of our pride. It is a courageous acceptance of our own humanity. To be able to say, clearly and without shame, "I cannot do this alone," is to break free from the prison of the ego and to step into the shared, open space of our common human experience. Furthermore, we must explore the art of receiving. Our fear of being a burden is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of giving and receiving. We see it as a one-way transaction where we are the needy recipient and the other person is the magnanimous giver who is being depleted by our needs. But giving and receiving are not two separate things. They are a single, circular flow of energy. One cannot exist without the other. When we refuse to allow someone to help us, out of our own pride or fear, we are not just denying ourselves the support we need. We are also denying that person the profound joy and meaning that comes from the act of giving. To care for another, to be of genuine service, is one of the deepest sources of human happiness. When we allow someone to help us carry our groceries, to drive us to an appointment, or to simply sit and listen to our troubles, we are giving them a precious gift. We are giving them the opportunity to express their compassion, to feel their own strength, to be useful, and to participate in the sacred dance of care. By receiving gracefully, we transform a potential burden into a shared moment of connection that enriches both people. This is the very essence of community. Imagine a healthy, ancient forest. It is a perfect model of interdependence. The great, mature trees, with their vast canopies, provide shelter for the smaller saplings, protecting them from the scorching sun and driving winds. The intricate network of their roots holds the soil in place for the entire ecosystem. The fungi on the forest floor connect the roots of different trees, sharing nutrients and information in a vast, subterranean web. When one of the giant old trees finally reaches the end of its life and falls, it does not become a burden on the forest. Its massive, decaying trunk becomes a vibrant center of new life. It provides a home for insects, mosses, and small animals. As it decomposes, it releases all the nutrients it has stored over centuries back into the soil, feeding the very saplings it once sheltered. Every member of the forest, at every stage of its life cycle, is both a giver and a receiver. A human community at its best is like this forest. The strong support the vulnerable, the experienced guide the young and the old, even in their decline, offer the gift of their wisdom and, ultimately, nourish the ground for the next generation. There is no shame in this cycle. There is only beauty and wisdom. So how do we practice this in our daily lives? We learn to ask, and we learn to receive. When we need help, we can practice asking for it directly, clearly, and without apology. Instead of a long preamble filled with shame, "I'm so sorry to be such a bother, and I wouldn't ask if it weren't absolutely necessary," but we can simply and honestly state the reality of the situation. "I'm finding it difficult to lift this. Would you be willing to give me a hand?" This honors our own need and respects the other person's freedom to say yes or no. And when help is offered, we can practice receiving it with a simple, open-hearted grace. Instead of deflecting with, "Oh no, you don't have to do that. I'm fine," we can just soften, let the help in, and offer a sincere and simple, "Thank you. I truly appreciate your help." This completes the circle of kindness without any residue of shame or awkwardness. When we let go of the exhausting pretense of perfect independence, we discover a new and profound freedom. It is the freedom to be authentically ourselves, with our strengths and our limitations. It is the freedom that comes from knowing we are part of a web of connection, held and supported by life in ways we can't always see. This release from the fear of being a burden allows us to participate more fully and joyfully in the world, just as we are. This newfound freedom to be ourselves without a facade opens up the possibility of living a life of deep meaning, regardless of our external circumstances or physical abilities. It allows us to move beyond the question of what we can or cannot do, and to ask a far more important question: given my life as it is now, in this very moment, what is my purpose? This leads us to our next great exploration, the art of discovering and embodying purpose at every age. Having discovered the freedom that lies in our shared interdependence, we are released from the lonely and exhausting task of pretending to be invincible. We can be ourselves, with all our strengths and all our vulnerabilities. This newfound authenticity opens the door to one of life's most essential questions, a question that becomes especially poignant as we grow older. What is my purpose? In a culture that equates human value with productivity, the transition away from a career or the active raising of a family can feel like stepping off a cliff. The roles and responsibilities that once defined us and filled our days are gone, and in their place, a frightening void can appear. We can feel that our purpose has ended, that we are no longer useful or needed. This perceived loss of purpose is a source of profound suffering, but the path of wisdom reveals that this is not an ending. It is a vital and necessary shedding of a skin, an opportunity to discover a purpose that is far deeper, more resilient, and more true than any job title or social role. Our first task is to redefine what purpose actually means. We have been conditioned to see purpose as something large, external, and singular. It is our career. It is our role as a parent. It is a grand project we are working on. The problem with this model is its fragility. When the career ends, when the children grow up and leave home, when the project is completed, our entire sense of meaning can collapse. The Buddhist path invites us to shift our understanding of purpose from a noun to a verb. It is not something we have, like a job. It is a quality we embody in our actions and intentions. Instead of defining our purpose as I am a teacher or I am a manager, we can define it as I am a person who helps others learn, or I am a person who creates order and harmony. The first definition is tied to a role that can be taken away. The second is a quality of being that we can express in countless ways at any stage of life, regardless of our circumstances. When we make this shift, we discover that opportunities for a purposeful life are all around us, in the smallest and most ordinary of moments. You can find a profound sense of purpose in the simple act of caring for a houseplant, tending to its needs, giving it water and light, watching it grow. This is a daily practice of selfless care, of nurturing life. You can find purpose in the act of smiling at a stranger in the grocery store. You have no idea what burdens that person is carrying. Your simple, genuine smile might be the only moment of warmth and human connection they experience all day. That is not a small purpose. That is a great purpose. You can find meaning in sharing your stories. To sit with a grandchild and tell them about your own childhood without any grand moral lesson is to weave the fabric of continuity. You are giving them a sense of their own roots, a connection to a life beyond their own. This is a sacred act of transmission. We can even infuse our most solitary practices with a boundless sense of purpose. In the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism, there is the ideal of the bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is a being who, out of great compassion, postpones their own final enlightenment in order to help all other beings awaken. Their every action is dedicated to this single, vast purpose. We can borrow this beautiful ideal for our own lives. When you sit down to meditate, you can set an intention at the beginning. You can say to yourself, I am doing this practice not just for my own peace. May any peace and clarity that arises from this sitting radiate outwards and be of benefit to my family, my community, and all living things. Suddenly, a simple, personal act of sitting quietly is transformed into an act of immense generosity and profound purpose. You are no longer just trying to calm your own mind. You are holding a space of peace for the entire world. This leads us to one of the most important shifts in perspective that comes with a life of wisdom. The shift from a purpose rooted in doing to a purpose rooted in being. For the first half of our lives, we are almost entirely identified with what we do. We are busy building, achieving, producing, and raising. Our value, in our own eyes and in the eyes of society, is tied to our output. But as we age, our physical capacity for doing may naturally lessen. This is not a failure. It is an invitation to discover the immense and often underestimated power of our being. Sometimes, the most purposeful thing we can do is to simply be a calm, loving, and peaceful presence in a chaotic world. We have seen how our own inner peace is a great legacy. To embody that peace, to radiate it without saying a word, is a powerful form of action. Your non-anxious presence can calm a fearful child. Your patient listening can soothe a troubled friend. Your quiet equanimity in the face of difficulty can inspire courage in your family. Your purpose is no longer defined by your activity, but by the quality of your consciousness. And that is a purpose that no one can ever take away from you. There is a story of an old master potter, famous for the exquisite beauty of his work. In his old age, his hands began to tremble. He could no longer produce the technically flawless, symmetrical pots of his youth. His young apprentices, with their steady hands, could now create pieces that were far more perfect than his. Yet, people still came from far and wide, seeking to buy a pot made by the old master himself. A student asked him why. The master smiled and said, "The apprentices can make a perfect pot, but only I can make a pot with the wisdom of 80 years in it." He held up a simple, lopsided tea bowl. "You see," he said, "the tremor in my hand gives it a texture that cannot be faked. The slight imbalance in its form gives it a unique character. This bowl is not perfect, but it is alive with the story of a whole life. Our lives, as we age, are like the work of this old potter. Our doing may become less perfect by worldly standards, but our Bienga accumulated wisdom, our compassion, our life experience infuses everything we do with a unique beauty and character that is priceless. It is helpful to see our lives as having different seasons, each with its own unique and valid purpose. Spring is the season of youth, and its purpose is growth, learning, and exploration. Summer is the season of adulthood, and its purpose is building, creating, and intense activity. Autumn is the season of maturity, and its purpose is harvesting the fruits of our labor, sharing our abundance, and beginning to let go. And winter is the season of old age. Its purpose is not a void. The purpose of winter is stillness, contemplation, and the conservation of what is most essential. It is a time for deep inner work, for the final ripening of wisdom, for letting the unnecessary fall away like leaves from a tree, revealing the strong, essential structure of the branches. To be in the winter of one's life and to mourn for the summer is to miss the profound and quiet beauty of the winter itself. Each season has its own purpose, and the purpose of our later years is to embody this quiet, reflective, and essential wisdom. And so, we discover that purpose is not something that is lost with age. It is something that transforms. It shifts from being loud to being quiet, from being external to being internal, from the world of doing to the world of being, by finding meaning in the smallest acts of care, by radiating a quality of peaceful presence, and by embracing the unique and sacred purpose of our life's current season. We can live with a sense of vibrant meaning and grace until our very last breath. This profound shift inward, from an outer agenda to an inner quality of being, brings us very close now to the heart of our spiritual journey. It prepares us to explore the ultimate state of rest, a peace that is not dependent on doing anything at all. It is the deep, silent, and luminous repose known as the sleep of the enlightened. Our journey has brought us from the external world of doing to the internal world of being. We have discovered that our true purpose and legacy lie not in what we achieve, but in the quality of peace and kindness we embody. This shift inward invites us to explore the ultimate state of rest, a peace so profound that it transcends our ordinary understanding of sleep. For most of our lives, even when our bodies are asleep, our minds are not at rest. They are working, churning through the day's events, wrestling with anxieties, and spinning elaborate dreams. We wake up in the morning often feeling as though we have run a marathon in our sleep, not truly refreshed, but simply having paused our conscious striving for a few hours. This raises a profound question. Have we ever, in our entire lives, been truly at rest? The path of wisdom suggests that there is a level of rest available to us that is far deeper than ordinary sleep. It is the rest that comes from letting the mind settle into its own true nature. It is what we might call the sleep of the enlightened. This deep and pervasive restlessness we experience is the symptom of a life lived in a state of subtle, constant effort. From the moment we are born, we are engaged in the project of me. We are striving to get what we want and avoid what we don't. We are working to build up and defend our sense of self, our ego. We are resisting the flow of impermanence, worrying about the future and regretting the past. This constant background hum of striving, defending, and resisting creates a deep tension in our body and mind. It is an existential weariness, the exhaustion that comes from the lifelong, impossible task of holding a separate, solid self together against the natural flow of the universe. This tension follows us into our beds at night. The doer, the manager, the warrior within us never fully clocks out, and so we are never fully at rest. But what if there was a part of you that was already and has always been perfectly at rest? What if, beneath the turbulent surface of your thoughts and emotions, there was a vast, silent, and peaceful ocean of being? The practice of deep meditation is the journey to discover this. We have used the metaphor of the mind as the sky and thoughts as the clouds. For a time, our practice was to anchor ourselves to the breath, to avoid being swept away by the clouds. But now, we can go deeper. We can turn our attention away from the clouds altogether and become interested in the nature of the sky itself. What is this awareness in which all thoughts and feelings appear? You will find that it is, by its very nature, completely peaceful. The sky is not disturbed by the storm clouds that pass through it. Your fundamental awareness is not harmed by the anxious thoughts that arise within it. This awareness is inherently open, clear, and boundless. It is not something you have to create or achieve. It is the very ground of your being. It is what you are, beneath the story of who you think you are. The sleep we are speaking of is the metaphor for finally coming to rest in this sky-like nature of the mind. It is the complete and utter surrender of all effort. It is the final letting go of the doer. We stop trying to be more mindful. We stop trying to be more peaceful. We stop trying to get somewhere else in our practice or in our lives. We simply stop. We let go of the reins and allow the mind to be as it is. In this radical act of non-doing, something extraordinary happens. The mind, no longer being fueled by our anxious energy, naturally begins to settle. The clouds of thought, no longer being grasped at or pushed away, begin to thin out and dissolve back into the clear sky. We discover a silence that was there all along, hidden beneath the noise of our own striving. This is not a dull, unconscious sleep. It is a state of vibrant, awake, and luminous presence. We can see a beautiful image of this in the traditional depictions of the Buddha on his deathbed. He is lying on his right side, in what is called the lion's posture, with a serene and gentle smile on his face. This is not the image of a man in anguish or fear. It is the image of a being in a state of perfect repose. This is the sleep of the enlightened. It is the posture of a body and mind that are completely free from all inner conflict, a being who is so fully let go that there is nothing left to be disturbed. He is demonstrating the ultimate rest, a peace that is not contingent on the body being healthy or young, but on the mind having found its true home in its own peaceful nature. This profound rest is not a state of nihilistic emptiness. It is a state of radical trust. It is the willingness to trust the entire process of life without reservation. We trust the wisdom of the body to breathe itself. We trust the thoughts and feelings to arise and pass away according to their own nature. We trust that we do not need to be the constant, anxious manager of our own experience. We let go of the illusion that we are in control, and we surrender to the far greater intelligence of the universe itself, the same intelligence that grows the trees and turns the planets. To fall asleep in this way is to fall into the loving arms of reality. It is the end of the long and exhausting war with what is. It is the beginning of a peace that passes all understanding. The qualities of this deep, inner rest are not blank or empty. The silence that we discover is not a dead silence. It is a living, vibrant silence, full of a quiet, unshakable joy. The peace is not a fragile peace that can be broken by a loud noise or a difficult event. It is a resilient peace that can hold all of life's experiences in its vast, compassionate embrace. And the feeling is one of finally, truly, having arrived home. For our entire lives, we have been wandering, seeking for a home in relationships, in careers, in possessions, in experiences. In this deep inner rest, we realize that the home we have been seeking has been right here all along. It is the silent, aware, and peaceful nature of our own mind. This experience of deep, wakeful rest, this sleep of the enlightened, is not some esoteric state reserved for great masters in distant caves. It is the birthright of every human being. It is the direct experience of your own deepest nature, which is obscured but never destroyed by the clouds of your restless mind. This profound peace, this vibrant stillness, is not an absence of sound, but a living presence. It is the silence that was here before your first thought and will be here after your last. And this brings us to the very heart and culmination of our journey together. It is time now to attune our hearts and our minds, and to learn how to listen directly to the very sound of silence. Throughout our journey, we have used words, concepts, and stories to illuminate the path. We have spoken of mindfulness, compassion, impermanence, and non-self. But all words are merely pointers, fingers pointing at the moon. They are not the moon itself. Now, as we approach the culmination of our time together, we must go beyond the words. We must venture into a direct experience, an intimate knowing that transcends intellectual understanding. We are going to learn to listen, not with our ears, but with our entire being. We are going to learn to listen to the most profound and healing sound in the universe, the sound of silence. In our modern world, we are conditioned to fear silence. We fill every available moment with noise, with music, with podcasts, with the endless chatter of our own minds. The absence of external stimulation can feel uncomfortable, even threatening. But the silence we are speaking of today is not the mere absence of noise. It is a presence, a deep, resonant, and living stillness that exists beneath the surface of all things. To understand this, consider a walk in a deep forest. A forest is never truly silent in the conventional sense. There is the rustle of leaves in the wind, the chirping of insects, the distant call of a bird, the snap of a twig underfoot. The air is alive with sound, and yet we experience a profound sense of peace, of tranquility, of silence. Why is this? It is because the silence we seek is not the absence of external sound, but the absence of internal noise. The sounds of the forest are pure. They exist in the present moment, without commentary, without judgment, without a story attached. The bird sings its song, and the wind blows through the pines. They are not worrying about yesterday's song or tomorrow's wind. Our minds, on the other hand, are rarely so pure. They are filled with a relentless, chaotic noise, a static of thoughts, anxieties, regrets, and plans. It is the noise of the inner critic, the voice that judges our every move. It is the noise of the warrior, the voice that endlessly rehearses future catastrophes, especially as we contemplate the realities of aging. It is the noise of regret, the voice that replays past mistakes. This internal static is the true source of our disquiet. The silence we seek is the space that opens up when this internal noise subsides, even for a moment. This silence has a quality, a texture, a sound of its own. It is the sound of pure acceptance. When you listen to this silence, you are hearing the sound of your own being, finally at rest, no longer at war with itself or with reality. It is the sound of the heart letting go of the struggle. It is the sound of compassion, a low, steady hum that communicates a simple message. It is okay. You are okay just as you are. This body, with its changes and vulnerabilities, is okay. It is the sound of the wisdom of non-self, the quiet realization that the chattering, anxious me is not the totality of who we are. Beneath that contracted, noisy self, there is a vast, open, silent awareness. This silence is our true home, a sanctuary that is always available to us, a deep well of peace that never runs dry, regardless of the circumstances of our life, regardless of our age. It has been with us since before our first breath, and it will be with us after our last. The only task is to learn how to listen for it. Let us try, together, right now. Find a comfortable posture, one that embodies dignity and ease. Close your eyes gently. First, simply bring your awareness to the world of sound around you, without any labels or judgments. Notice the most obvious sounds, perhaps the hum of a refrigerator, the distant traffic, the sound of your own breathing. Just let these sounds wash over you. They are neither good nor bad. They are simply what is. Now, begin to listen more deeply. Can you listen not just to the sounds, but to the space in which the sounds are happening? Can you hear the quiet canvas upon which these sounds are painted? Listen for the pause between the sounds, the brief moments of quiet. This is the first layer of silence. Now, let your awareness turn inward. Notice the stream of your thoughts. See them as sounds of the mind. A thought about the future arises. A memory from the past appears. A worry surfaces. Just as you listen to the external sounds, listen to these internal sounds without getting caught in their stories. You don't have to follow them. You don't have to believe them. You are the listener, not the thought. As you continue to sit, see if you can listen even more deeply. Beneath the river of thoughts, what is there? There is a quietness, a stillness. It might be very subtle at first, like trying to hear a feather fall in a noisy room. But it is there. This is the sound of silence. This is the sound of your own awareness. Rest in this listening. There is nothing to achieve, nothing to fix. Simply be the listener, resting in the vast, silent field of your own being. This is your refuge. It is always here. There is a beautiful old story about a man who dedicated his life to finding the most peaceful place on earth. He traveled the world, seeking out remote monasteries, silent mountaintops, and desolate deserts. But everywhere he went, there was some small noise to disturb him. The chanting of monks, the whistling of the wind, the scurrying of a mouse. Disheartened, he was about to give up when he heard tales of a giant, thundering waterfall so loud it deafened all who came near it. In a moment of strange inspiration, he thought that perhaps within the roar, he might find a different kind of silence. He journeyed to the waterfall, and the sound was indeed overwhelming, a constant, powerful roar that seemed to shake the very ground. He felt a sense of disappointment, but as he stood there, watching the immense curtain of water, he noticed something remarkable. Tucked in a small, dry crevice in the rock face, directly behind the pounding wall of water, a tiny bird had built its nest. And in that nest, the bird was peacefully asleep, sheltered and serene amidst the deafening chaos. In that moment, the man understood. Peace is not the absence of the storm. Peace is finding the quiet shelter in the heart of the storm. The sound of the waterfall could not touch the bird's inner stillness, and so it is with us. The chaos of the world, the challenges of aging, the noise of our own minds, these are the waterfall. But within us, there is always a quiet place, a nest of serene awareness where we can rest, untouched. Our practice is to learn to find our way to that inner sanctuary, to listen for its silent song beneath the roar of daily life. This is the ultimate skill, the final piece of the puzzle. It is the art of hearing the silence that is always here, our timeless, ageless home. Our journey together is now drawing to a close. We began with the image of a single autumn leaf, a potent symbol for our own fears about aging, change, and the inevitable letting go. From that place of quiet apprehension, we embarked on a profound exploration. We looked directly at the truths of existence, not to become morbid, but to become free. We learned that by understanding impermanence, we could learn to cherish the present. By understanding the nature of suffering, we could cultivate compassion. And by seeing through the illusion of a fixed, separate self, we could touch a vast and interconnected reality. This was not a theoretical exercise. We walked the path of practice. We anchored ourselves in the simple, life-giving rhythm of the breath through mindfulness. We opened our hearts to ourselves and to others through loving kindness. We learned the gentle art of Bung Ba, of letting go of the burdens that were never truly ours to carry. And through it all, we cultivated wisdom, a clear seeing that allowed us to find purpose, meaning, and an unshakable peace, not in spite of life's challenges, but right in the midst of them. This journey was never about trying to prevent the winter of our lives. It was about learning to change our entire relationship with the seasons of existence, to find the stark beauty in the autumn and the deep, restorative peace in the winter. The ultimate message, the heart of all these teachings, is this: peace is not a distant destination you must strive to reach in the future. It is not a prize awarded only to the lucky or the specially ordained. Peace is the fundamental nature of your own mind. It is that sound of silence we have just explored, a silent, knowing presence that is always and already here, patiently waiting to be noticed. In this light, aging is not a tragedy. It is not a process of decay. It is a profound homecoming. With each year that passes, with each layer of ambition and distraction that falls away, we are given the opportunity to return to something more essential, more real. The aging process, when met with wisdom and compassion, is a journey back to the stillness of our own source, the primordial silence from which we came and to which we will return. It is a ripening, a softening, a settling into the truth of who we have always been beneath the surface of our busy lives. Therefore, end this journey not with a sense of completion, but with a feeling of profound empowerment and a gentle beginning. You have everything you need. The tools are within you. The path is beneath your feet. From this moment forward, make a vow to treat your own aging self with the deep, unconditional kindness you would offer a beloved friend. Listen to the changing needs and whispers of your body with the profound patience and respect of a wise teacher. Look out at the world, at the young and the old, at the joyful and the grieving, with the eyes of one who understands that we are all interconnected, all part of the same mysterious, beautiful unfolding. Peace is not something you must find or earn or create. It is something you must simply allow. Allow it to surface from the depths of your own being. Let it fill the spaces between your thoughts. Let it soften the edges of your fears. Begin now, in this very moment, in the gentle rhythm of this very breath.